Welcome back. You're in the C-Space studio. I'm your host, James Kotecki. This is our afternoon session of interviews with advertising, marketing, media, and branding leaders here at C-Space. And we're so excited to be joined for our first of the afternoon session by Kara Pratt, a returning guest and the Senior Vice President at Kroger Precision Media. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me back, James.
All right, so Kroger Precision Media, we talked about it last year, but I always like to have people kind of redefine, what does your brand mean now going into 2025?
It really is around precision audiences, and human connection has to be delivered and derived through the right relevancy and the right responsibility. And so as we think about how we're creating these connections between customers and brands, being really audience first, channel agnostic, and science driven in all aspects of how we show up.
Audience first, what was the second one that you said?
Channel agnostic.
Audience first, channel agnostic.
Science driven.
Science driven, all very important, and we can get into all of those things. But taking a step back, so Kroger Precision Media, can you give me just a sense of the scope of all the places that you would show up for consumers who are interacting with something that you're touching?
Yeah, of course. A core part of the retail ecosystem is helping brands win within retail in the commerce space. So you have an owned and operated asset that we engage with our brand partners on. The other layer is around the data accessibility and the data layer to influence media and media plans, agnostic of being in any one publisher ecosystem.
Okay.
And so that's where we can work with brands under what are the KPIs, what's the job to be done, what are the opportunities of who they want to expose what content to, no matter where that consumer is.
Okay.
And then of course we've got the right relationships with appropriate data onboarders and DSPs and technology companies and publishers to make sure that we can get the right content exposed to the right consumer no matter where they're consuming that content.
So to borrow maybe a phrase from Kroger itself, are you kind of like a one-stop shop for all the needs of what somebody might want to do when they're advertising?
We can create a new level of accountability across any ad dollar spent.
And what's your message that you're bringing here to CES 2025? I'm sure you're meeting with a lot of people and having a lot of conversations.
It's really around the reality today more than ever that efficiency and effectiveness, not only can it coexist, but it has to. It has to through this next horizon of how we really bring together brand building efforts alongside the performance marketing expectations of the past. We've talked for years in this industry that the funnel is collapsing. The funnel has collapsed. And we need to be able to make sure that we're bringing together really valuable connection points no matter where that consumer is. And so efficiency and effectiveness, it has to coexist. And we've got the right responsibility of the data assets and human connection to allow that to happen.
Can you explain a bit more about the funnel has collapsed? What does it look like now? Is there any shape that we can assign to this? Any geometric shape we can use as a metaphor?
Well, it's an awesome question. I don't have a new geometric shape specifically to that question. But really, the fundamental messaging behind that new reality is brand builders and brand planners can't think like they have in the past. And so we have to really rethink process and practice from the beginning. Audience planning has to reset and ignite a new opportunity to who do we want to expose what content to, and then we work through the different channels that are the right channels to connect with customers. And then you have to have a much greater level of agility within the channel allocation, within the audience experience, and the creative overlays. And so, there is not an opportunity anymore to not bring a fluid nature to business planning as well as brand planning. And of course, at the end of the day, brands need to move product. They need to make sure that their product, their message is resonating, and they move items off the shelf.
If you're cool with it, I'm going to call it the fluid dodecahedron. I was trying to remember a name from geometry class, and that's the first one I came up with. So we can coin this new thing together here at CES. It's all about innovation, and I think we can be innovators there. Is there, I think embedded in the answers that you just gave me were a number of different industry trends. But when you look at the trends that you're driving and that you're also kind of operating within, what are those frameworks that you're trying to make sure that you're steering your ship in the right way?
There is definite focus and commitment once you get past the core premise of responsibility that has to happen through any level of human connection, right, and customer connection, and making sure we're creating that right value. It next gets into how we create the right, remove friction, right? What is the right seamless access to this intelligence to help make the entire marketing environment more performant. And so what we've been doing over the last couple of years, we're 7 years in, we're 7 years young, if you will. What we've been doing is adjusting some of the business models and how we go to market alongside some of the technology partners, all to be able to connect with the practitioners every single day and make their lives easier. There's no shortage of data out there. The density of data, the utility of data, the value of that data, there is a differentiation in the marketplace. But how do we engage at the starting point with brands and with our agency partners, and ultimately with the technology partners to make sure that we remove friction?
Yeah. Do you think about serving kind of two audiences, both the end consumer and the brand partners, and do you kind of hold those ideas maybe in tension or partnership?
Absolutely, and the end consumer is going to tell us whether we're getting it right.
Right. Let's talk about AI, because we're here at CES 2025 and everyone else is talking about it, so we might as well get into this as well. Let's talk about your customers from the perspective of the brand partners that you're working with. What do they expect from AI? What do they expect to just work now? And then how are you actually delivering on that?
Well, there is definitely an expectation where the acceleration of content and creative experiences, that is supercharged and can be supercharged. Really, again, it has to sit within the brand framework of responsibility, but that is an expectation. That's where we're seeing that content and creative push really take shape. And it's an important piece of the puzzle, right? Because there needs to be the right precision of the creative asset connected to audiences, and we need to be able to enable that in a way that we can scale.
Yeah. So there's obviously no shortage of interesting and exciting places to reach customers, and places that are growing include things like streaming services, which are increasingly adding advertising options as a model. You can reach people in stores increasingly. A lot more screens maybe going up in stores. What's really exciting to you? What's the area? Maybe if you want to cheat and choose all of them, you can. But like, what's really exciting to you about these different areas and opportunities of pockets to kind of reach people in new ways?
Yeah, I think there's definitely three that are front of mind. Streaming is definitely one of them. The addressability that is now accessible and only continuing to grow is really material. And we've run well over 100 CTV campaigns, and we're seeing, again, using the right depth and density of the data asset, we're seeing our household penetration household penetration lift grow north of 8%. Sales lift being just shy of 6%. That's great, because the investment that's going to sit behind streaming and then where efficiency is going to continue to play out over time. Obviously, it's a more premium game right now, but that's a core piece and a core promise. The other space that we're excited about moving into is how do we unlock and enable our audiences within the social constructs as well. Obviously, commerce is moving fast, and social commerce is moving fast, and that's a big space. And then the last bit, you talked about it within stores and screens, and we're in an early journey there, and that is one that we do believe in the promise of the future. How do we do that in a way that that inspires and connects people as they move through a very traditional journey in a physical format?
And all those things kind of converge, right? So if I buy something in a store and then I take a picture of it and post it on social media because that brand is in some ways part of my identity, these things begin to converge, right? Is there something that you are predicting or imagining for the next 5 years that you think other people in your space might see as implausible, but you really think is maybe going to happen?
It's a great question. The bit that this industry still is sitting behind is this expectation of these retail data signals and the role that retail data signals will materially play in more traditional kind of awareness-driven channels, and we do sit behind the premise of you are what you buy, and how do we use these different signals more strategically across an entire business plan, and that's one that we still are early days on, not philosophically challenging that reality, but practically implementing new processes for brands to live by and for their business partners to execute against.
And are there changing ways of measuring success in this space, and are there different ways brands need to be thinking about measuring success as opposed to the past?
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing that take shape, and that's been a really exciting part over the last few years of the traditional media metrics. It's not that they're not important. That is a lens that is looked at, but it's not the lens into effectiveness or the lens into efficiency. The mix models of annualized mix models, even quarterly mix models. This industry moves too fast to rely on wait 12 weeks to understand performance. And so speed of learning and being able to use these micro signals more fluidly into the business outcomes is really, really critical.
And is it also maybe even about like being willing, so if someone were to say, oh, just give me more time, give me more data, I'll give you the perfect answer. Is it about maybe philosophically a willingness to say, I don't have time to wait for the perfect answer, I just need the signal and make the best option that I have right now?
Yeah, and keep moving and keep learning. And I think the other bit is everybody wants to look at incrementality. Everybody wants to think about how effective and efficient can my media be. This industry was born off of really driving to a bottom line on efficiency and cheap reach, you could waste a lot of investment dollars going against cheap reach. And so getting into what truly is the business outcome and brand outcome. What do we think about from a household penetration, net incremental households into the brand, long-term value, using some different data points and KPIs is going to be really important.
Well, so much more to talk about when we hopefully have you back again. Kara Pratt, Kroger Precision Media. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you so much for watching us. This is the C Space Studio. I'm your host, James Kotecki. We are here at CES 2025, and more great conversations are just ahead. Definitely live. welcome back. You're in the C-Space studio here with me, James Kotecki. We are at CES 2025 and talking to some of the most interesting people in marketing, media, advertising, and branding. And one of those is sitting right here, Shar Pajarmi, CEO, GroupM North America. Thanks for joining us here in the C-Space studio today.
Thanks for having me, James.
Okay, so GroupM North America, I think, people who have watched the C-Space studio, loyal viewers probably have an understanding of what GroupM North America, what GroupM is all about. But can you just remind us, what does the brand stand for now here in 2025? What is your organization all
about? We are a media agency holding company, global media agency holding company, largest global media agency holding company, and I represent the North America arm of that.
So what are you up to here at CES 2025? What's your message for folks?
I guess the reason that I enjoy CES, it feels like quite a fast start to the year after the holidays. But the things I guess I enjoy about it, what I prioritize about it, what I like to think our team prioritizes is everyone's here having the same conversations about the same things, they're all hearing the same stuff, so you're kind of all in a similar mindset. So one, I think it's nice when we're all on the level playing field. And as an industry, you're thinking about what the future looks like. And then two, to that point, CES really is, it's an innovation conference, right? It's all about the future. And I think January, first week of Jan, second week of Jan, it's probably a really good time to be thinking about the future. We're thinking about our priorities for the year after, for maybe 3-4 years ahead. Being surrounded by innovation, future-facing technology, future-facing thoughts means that we're all kind of thinking about the same things and prioritizing our year ahead.
So if CES is about getting everyone on the same page, what are some of those conversations that you're hearing that can illustrate industry trends? And then as a bonus follow-up to that question, is there a trend that you think is under-discussed, that maybe you think more people should be buzzing about here at CES?
I'll probably come to the second question first, which is a trend that I think we could all be talking about a bit more than we are, which is probably accountability. I think we talk a lot about what certain things do and the performance of certain things, but I don't think we necessarily think about whether or not those things are working. Mm-hmm. And I think that brings me to the first thing, which is I think the kind of trends that we're talking about a lot at the moment are around data, around predictability, around whether or not we can work in a more agile manner as an industry. I think the industry has traditionally not worked in as agile a manner as it would have liked to. And when you think about the level of data sets that are available now from various different places, that we're able now to think more predictably and predictively about how performance works, how performance doesn't work, and make decisions based on that.
So if we should be talking more about accountability, is there a group that you think should be holding another group more accountable? Should brands be holding agencies and advertising companies more accountable for kind of reporting performance? Should they be expecting certain kinds of data that they're not getting? Tell me more about what accountability would look like ideally.
I think broadly it's an industry responsibility to think about accountability and what the future of that looks like. That said, for our place, our job is to steward the industry as much as we can, so we push in that direction and we lean into our clients and our partners to have those conversations.
Yeah. I want to talk about another trend that is sweeping the world, which is a demographic one, Generation Alpha. How do you define Gen Alpha? Is it, are Gen Alpha people getting jobs yet? I don't think so, but they do kind of scare me because this is the new technology generation that is coming up and maybe using technology in new ways and that advertisers and branders have to think about. So tell me about what you're thinking there.
So, well, I guess interestingly, Gen Beta started, 7 days ago?
Okay.
So technically, 2025 onwards is Gen Beta, right? Wow. So it's everyone before a week ago.
I won't ask you about that yet, because it seems like we've only had one week of data on what that generation likes to do.
Exactly. I guess I would define Gen Alpha as my kids.
Yeah.
But I guess professionally, I would think about it. I mean, look, the things that are important to Gen Alpha, it's common sense, right? These are individuals who've, been brought up completely immersed in technology. It's second nature to them. They're not thinking about it, and therefore, how brands, as it pertains to our industry, connect with those individuals has to be slightly different. You have to think in a very personalized manner, you have to think about storytelling, you have to think about the contextual experience for individuals. Media now to these individuals, to Gen Alpha, is everywhere and in everything. It's completely connected across the ecosystem, all the way through to, commerce and retail. And I think that as a brand, you have to come at them in that manner. That's what they expect, and if it doesn't feel like that, then it comes across as inauthentic and it doesn't resonate.
So from what you're saying, it's not necessarily a dramatic shift that brands have to do to engage in alpha, but it does require them to maybe level up and really be on their game and doing all the right things that they maybe already should have known that they should have been doing anyway.
Absolutely. Agility absolutely has to be in everything that they do. You have to think about the contextual experience with the individual that you're targeting, and I think taking an audience-based approach to that is critical. And if you don't do that, and if you work in a more traditional manner, and you don't move with the times, so to speak, then yeah, I think people won't necessarily resonate with your brand.
One thing we talk about a lot here at the C-Space Studio is streaming and the way that streaming is continuing to evolve, especially from an advertising and branding perspective. What's on the horizon when you look out at 2025? What are some of the milestones or thoughts you have about how that continues to evolve?
I think a lot, streaming in 2025. Look, I think broad themes that are interesting to me is you used to have streaming and sports, and now you have lots of sports in streaming. Yes. I think that's a very interesting trend that obviously is going to continue. One of the things when we talk about streaming, and not necessarily when I talk about this, but when I hear people talking about streaming platforms, is obviously how many streaming services the market can tolerate. I think the answer is probably slightly more than people think. When that conversation's had, I often hear people talking about it in a comparative sense to the legacy kind of cable operators, and how many cable operators markets could tolerate. But I think the fundamental alignment in the cable operators historically was their business models were fundamentally the same or similar at the back end. I think a lot of the streaming services, the business models in the back end, the companies and the organizations that operate them are incredibly different. Will there be some consolidation in the space? Possibly. What I really find interesting about streaming at the moment is how much they're all experimenting with different forms of content, different forms of content delivery. I talked about sport, we talked about theatrical releases and so on. Yeah. So I think there's a huge amount to see in that space in 2025.
Is there something that you think, if you could wave a magic wand or maybe give some advice to a streaming service and say, here's something that you can do to stand out from, maybe that's on the front end or maybe even on the back end, as you say, here's something that you can actually do to really differentiate. Is there one thing that you think that somebody should pick the ball up and run with?
Honestly, I think all the streaming services are doing a great job at experimenting and trying different things. I think about one that we obviously work closely with as a GroupM client, NBCU in Peacock. Yeah. I think if you think about how these platforms have evolved, even over the last 12 months, it's kind of pretty miraculous, to be honest, the way the algorithms are so personalized now. So I think keep on going in that manner.
Mm-hmm. I detect an accent, and I believe that you used to live in Sydney, Australia, and work in Sydney.
It's not an Australian accent.
It's not.
It's not. It's an English accent.
The viewers will know. I never said it was an Australian accent.
Fair point.
But I know that you used to work in Australia, and
do.
Obviously you're from the UK. So, do these different cultural experiences influence the way you think about the future and your work? Because interestingly, all these are English-speaking countries, right? And maybe there's some relative homogenization between the cultures. But do they give you different perspectives, these different backgrounds?
That's a fair point. I've worked in 4 different countries: the UK, which is where I'm from, New Zealand, Australia, and the US. And you're right, they are all English-speaking countries. Actually, given my role in North America, Canada as well. So technically, I've done all 5 of the English-speaking countries, pretty much. Which is obviously easier, not having to learn another language, not that I don't speak other languages. I think probably the cultural capability that's allowed me to pick up is being comfortable with change. I mean, I left the UK over 20 years ago now. I've lived in many different cities, in many different countries. I'm very comfortable with change. I'm very relaxed with change. Yeah. It doesn't kind of faze me. All of the cultures of all 4 of those countries are very different. Obviously, there are parallels and similarities. But genuinely being comfortable with change and the different nuances of those cultures is probably the thing that's kind of stuck with me.
Is there something outside your industry that inspires you? We're here at CES, there's so many different technologies, for example, but even beyond that, what inspires you to do the innovation work that you do inside your industry?
I think the rate of change in technology now I find pretty inspiring. Mm-hmm. I think it's only maybe in the last year or 2 that I've been genuinely blown away by certain technological experiences, experiencing consumer technology. You think about, Gen AI and AI and, all of the kind of work tools that we use, but also in our personal lives. It's kind of mind-blowing. I'll give you an example. I was lucky enough to be at Google's Zeitgeist last year, I have to say now, and I got to try out Google Starline, which is their VC system, their video conferencing meeting system, and it's a 4D video with the screen, and you go in one room and someone else is in the other, and they say, I'm going to turn it on now, and literally, I'm here and you're there. Like it's like Star Wars and the Princess Leia R2-D2 kind of hologram. You put your hand out, my hand can go through your hand. It's almost destabilizing, for your human senses to kind of get your head around it. So I'm really inspired by that kind of thing. personally, obviously, I'm inspired by my kids. And then other areas of kind of inspiration that I look to, I'm a huge sports fan, so I look to sport for inspiration, and I think this year I've just done it, but last year, the Olympics, I found that to be a pretty inspiring story. I thought the US, in particular the US women's track and field team, I thought like their performance, somebody told me a stat that they would have been one of the top countries if you just counted their medal count alone. I found that pretty inspiring.
So you're inspired by change, you're cool with change because of your background, but you're also kind of blown away by change. What's the one piece of advice that you give to your team? How do you keep your team kind of on track given all the different potential changes that it could be adopting?
I think really lean into it. It's funny you asked that because I was in a conversation this morning about AI, with a large technology company about how their AI is influencing, the professional workspace and professional work tools. And actually the discussion that we were having was, it's far more likely that, for example, with AI, how we interact with it personally will impact how we use it professionally. Because playing with it, trying it, using it, seeing the value that it brings to you is going to be far more interesting personally, and the habits that we pick up and how that informs the technology is probably the stuff that shows up. So I think probably lean into it. It's probably not the right thing to say, but lean into it personally for the things that kind of you're doing in your own life.
Yeah, that's great advice. Sharp Pajami, GroupM North America, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it.
And thank you so much for watching. This is the C-Space Studio. I'm your host, James Kotecki. Keep it right here because more great conversations are just ahead at CES 2025. Welcome back. You're in the C-Space studio here at CES 2025, and I'm your host, James Kotecki, joined by Brian Toombs, head of Roku Brand Studio at Roku. Of course, welcome to the C-Space studio.
Thanks for having me, James.
Okay, so Roku, I am a Roku user actually, so I know exactly what Roku is. It helps me turn on my TV and get the content that I want to watch.
Yep.
So Roku Brand Studio, tell us about that, what you're doing there.
Yeah, really what it is I sit on the content team. And as part of that leadership team, advertising partners are critical to our business and to the user experience. So we act as the conduit between all of our verticals in content, originals, license, sports, and This Old House, and a conduit to our ad sales team.
You said This Old House, that's like one specific content, that's its own vertical.
That's its own vertical within our content ecosystem, yes.
And so do you own all of the rights to that, like going back? Is that why that's its own vertical?
Yeah, it's a great library.
Okay.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Okay,
yeah.
This is like the famous home repair show.
Yeah.
And are they still making more?
Absolutely,
Okay.
we're like season 39 or something.
Is it the same host though?
They've evolved, yeah,
Okay,
and there's a lot of different spin-off franchises now too.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of old houses and a lot of. I mean, it's really right on trend, right? Because people love going online or just looking up how to do different things and then trying to do it themselves. DIY.
It's very functional.
Yeah.
And we have a great brand partner with Home Depot, who's been a part of the show for a very long time.
All right, so. What are you looking at with the evolution of streaming this year? You're sitting at a really unique spot with Roku, and I'm talking to a lot of people about how streaming is evolving. What are the major milestones that you're thinking about, or just things that you're looking out at 2025 and expecting to see?
Yeah, I mean, obviously consolidation is something that everybody's talking about. We went through the golden age of television, as they said, and what we are finding is that consumers felt like there's almost too much TV.
Yeah.
It's a lot of great storytelling, but it's a bit hard to find, and there's such volume that it makes the experience a bit challenging. Yeah. So at Roku, what we say is guided television. It's the guided era, right? So helping you get, like you mentioned at the beginning, get to the thing that you want to watch most. So I think there's a lot of milestones ahead in that direction, right? Of like consolidating your viewing experience. Where do I find making it easier on the user to find the streaming entertainment that they're looking for.
The golden age to the guided age. And maybe from a consumer perspective, maybe better, right? Because the golden age television, it's like, if you think about the golden age is over, that might mean things are worse. But the golden age content is still all out there. And I probably didn't even get to watch a tenth of the golden age content when it was coming out.
That's exactly right. And so it's all about the user experience. It's all about making it easier for consumers to find the content they want to watch.
How much is live a component of what you're thinking about? I mean, there's a lot of trends I could name here, like live interactivity, personalization. We talked about personalization a bit. But as far as a future of more live events, is that something that you're tracking and tracking toward?
As in like streaming live events?
Yeah, live
Absolutely.
streaming events.
And I think that not only streaming live events, but live linear television. We have found a lot of interest and growth in that area. Fast channels being a great example, right? People like the TV experience, and live programming is just another aspect within that ecosystem. But there's no doubt, we've at Roku, we've now have exclusive MLB Sunday morning games that we're live streaming. We're going to be announcing another a live stunt coming up this summer in Las Vegas.
Okay.
So stay tuned for that.
Okay, I love a stunt.
And more in that direction for sure.
And so when we talk about services being increasingly ad-supported or adding these different ad-supported options, I wonder if you have a unique take on that, because what an ad might necessarily look like is not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be a 30-second or 15-second spot. It can be a much kind of deeper, more integrated brand partnership, and maybe those things can support different kinds of content as well. So tell me about your perspective on what an advertisement actually means.
Yeah, well, so again, that's a big reason the brand studio exists, right, is to connect advertisers to content.
Yeah.
I don't look at it as advertising. I look at it as brand partners. And that's not just me using different words. What it means is, what is your goal as a brand? Well, it's to reach an audience. How do you do that? Well, there are tools, right? And a 30-second ad is one of those tools, but engaging them through content can be really powerful, because instead of a fleeting 30-second ad or a 6-second ad, you are spending time with your consumer through storytelling. Another thing that I'm super passionate about is that advertisers are very good at reaching audiences. That's what they do, right? And and have a lot of great data. We have great partnerships with like Kroger and Walmart and retailers like that, where we're exchanging data and learning more about our audience, both on the platform and out in the real world. And when that's combined, that creates a better user experience. And when the advertiser is associated with that, it's a win-win-win.
And the customer doesn't necessarily think of it as advertising, or
no. What we find is that, again, ease of use, right? Yeah. So you're in the Roku ecosystem. I'm guiding to content. I don't like you know, our president Charlie Collier said this morning. He goes, you know, when you go to watch TV, you go, I'm going to watch the original. It's like, no, you're going to go watch TV,
right?
And you want to figure out what to watch, right?
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of success at Roku because we are ad supported and free. That partnering with advertisers to create entertainment or support entertainment has been tremendously successful. The consumers don't distinguish. They don't say, oh, that's a brand thing or that's a not brand thing. It's either is I like it or I don't like it.
Yeah. Do you ever have to give guidance to the brands that you work with, steer them away from certain maybe preconceived notions about what this is going to be, and maybe steer them towards good ideas about how to create this kind of branded content?
Well, to be clear, it's not just branded content. That spectrum has really grown. And I would say that brands are actually really becoming more sophisticated in this space. They know what story they want to tell, and if everybody leans into what their expertise is, in our case, it is producing and distributing, you know, television storytelling. They have a message. They have a theme that they want to capture. Those things work really well together. So I don't really, you know, and especially when we're working at like a holdco level or really at the top of the agency, people are really rowing in the same direction. There isn't a lot of uphill convincing that I see.
Yeah. Do you think that there's something outside your industry that gives you special inspiration to do what you do? And we're here at CES, you could pick any different kind of technology, I suppose, that you see here on the show floor. But are there things that you're drawing inspiration from that are beyond your day-to-day that you can incorporate back into the work that you do?
You mean me personally, or?
Yeah, you personally.
That's a great question. Outside the industry. You know, I would say that I am very inspired by the new creator economy. Like, it's almost like what it, you know, 3.0 or whatever, because there's a whole generation of people that are coming up that have a phone in their pocket that can create content and know how to storytell. Not all storytelling is the tradition. You know, we talk about golden age of TV. It's not all prestige drama. And so, for example, like, this is kind of a weird story, but I have some tension headaches. And so I was watching this thing about how to like massage your head, and I met a person through that. She runs a massage service, and she's just her own. She's a small business owner. And she put that out there, right? And it's you can think about that at scale on a place like Roku, where I can click, and now all of a sudden I've taken another step after I've watched something. Now I can, so I think, like, I guess what I'm saying is the creator economy moving to television, right? The ability to purchase services and goods through your television, while we've always kind of said that was going to be the case, it's moving, it's not moving from the phone to the TV and leaving the phone, it's just expanding to the television.
And of course, you know, on Roku, I can go watch YouTube or any number of other things that are creator-generated things. And so again, from that consumer perspective, do they really differentiate in their minds between, you know, something that's, you know, creator, influencer generated or more professionally done or things like that? I mean, at some level, they must know the difference, but at the end of the day, they just want to watch what they want to watch. Well,
consumers do, right? And this is something I think brands are getting really good at, is let's give our audience credit. They're smarter than we think they are, right? We don't have to speak at them. We can engage them in a way, right? And so if I want to run YouTube clips, I know what that is. If I want to watch a romantic comedy, I know what that is. I think particularly in my business, like coming from like traditional entertainment in Hollywood, there's a lot of distinction around professionally produced and of quality. I get why we say that, but basically that just means cost, right? And sometimes the more, it takes a lot more money to tell the story that you want to tell. You can't tell Shogun on a phone, right?
Although that actually would be a funny idea for a series.
Well, I used to work at Funny or Die, and that sounds like a good Funny or Die bit.
So I'm going to end with a huge question that we have to just squeeze into a few seconds of an answer. Are you more optimistic given where generative AI is as far as its impact on human creativity? Does it make you excited? Where's your mentality when it comes to the generative AI elements in creativity?
I think it's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool. And I'm not smart enough to know all the applications of that, but I certainly think that it's not one way or the other. I think we just have to learn how to use it to benefit. I think human imagination is always going to exist, and storytelling is a human characteristic, but there's no doubt that generative AI can help us put things into place that can help create a broader story.
Well, it's always great to have Roku here in the C-Space studio. Brian Toombs, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, James.
And thank you so much for watching. My name is James Kotecki. This is CES 2025. More great conversations are just ahead, so keep it right here in the C-Space studio. you're back. It's the C-Space studio, and you're back with me, James Kotecki. This is CES 2025, and joining us right now for a conversation is Rob Wilk, the Chief Revenue Officer at Yahoo. Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate the enthusiastic Yahoo, James.
Well, you have a little exclamation point next to the Y there, and I believe that is the brand, right? Yahoo exclamation point is the official name of the company.
That's actually a really good fun fact. Yahoo is one of the only brands in the world who officially has an exclamation point in the brand.
Well, then we have to have an enthusiastic conversation about it. But tell me what Yahoo means. So Yahoo, obviously a very storied brand. People have known Yahoo for, I suppose, decades now, right? So what does Yahoo mean going into 2025?
Yeah, I love that question. And yeah, it's been almost 30 years, believe it or not. We like to tell people that Yahoo is a trusted guide to the internet. Whether it's checking your email and seeing some good news from a friend, whether it's getting a stock tip that helps your portfolio on Yahoo Finance, whether it's getting a good pickup on your Yahoo fantasy team. Most fantasy teams are over now for football, but we're kicking right back into the next sport. So we just view ourselves as like, we want to help people get stuff done.
And talk to me about how you imbue trust into that part of the trusted way to look at the internet conversation. How much of it is a human or a team of humans kind of looking at this stuff? Tell me where the trust comes in.
Yeah, I mean, listen, part of the beauty of being a brand as long as Yahoo's been around for is that there's inherent trust because we've been there for a lot of people for 2 or 3 decades. But what I tend to tell clients and what we're here to tell clients here today is like, Yahoo's likely not the Yahoo that you think, and certainly not the Yahoo that you remember.
Okay.
And a great example of that is, I'm sure every single person who sat in this chair talks about AI.
Yep.
The way that I'm trying to articulate it is there's theoretical AI, and then there's like, how are people actually using it today in practice, not some theory. And my favorite example is Yahoo News. So many people don't realize Yahoo News is the #1 source for news in the US, 190 million uniques every single month. In April of last year, we acquired a company called Artifact, which was owned by Kevin Systrom, who's the founder of Instagram. And one of the things we did is we infused Artifact all throughout Yahoo, but certainly within Yahoo News. So when you ask me about trust, what's the most important thing when it comes to news? Is the information I'm getting trustworthy? Is it reliable? Is it reinforcing my existing bias? So what we do with Artifact's technology is we use AI to make sure that people see both sides of every story as much as they can. We try to make sure that it doesn't reinforce that bias, but we always put it next to a personalized area and then what we call just our top stories, which have nothing to do with AI. Okay. And to me, that's the best example of you're always going to need technology to help you sift through the millions of news stories a day, but you're still going to need human beings to make sure that the AI doesn't drive you in a bad direction. And
just to get into the weeds a bit, is the AI there with Artifact, is it generating new content? Like if I wrote an article, would it generate content that had the opposing view and put it there? Or is it generative AI that's showing me something that the AI is creating the opposite view?
Yeah, great question. So it's actually both sides.
Okay.
So number one is, the core reason for using AI, and by the way, this is just news. We can talk about it in terms of sports, in terms of mail. If we stick with news just for a moment, some of the articles are really long. So there's always a button that generates key takeaways. That's basically what I call the TLDR version, right? 2 or 3 bullets of this is really what this is about. But really, what we're trying to do is we're trying to surface information to people. So a lot of our AI is geared towards kind of wading through all the choices and making sure that we can show you the things that we believe will be most interesting to you.
And do you think this is what customers expect from AI right now? How much do you surface to the average person who's coming to the site, the amount of AI that's there, how much of it is behind the scenes, and how does that play into the trust part? Yeah,
it's funny, if you look at, let's use Yahoo Mail just as an example now. Yahoo Mail's the #2 email provider. Some people have had their Yahoo Mails for 20 years, 20 plus years.
I think I probably have.
Yeah, exactly. My wife got a Yahoo Mail when we got married. That was 21 years ago, and she still has that new email. But when you think about mail, one of the things we do is we can sort your inbox by what we think is a priority. So we don't actually say, here's your AI and here, enjoy it. It's just part of the user experience. And it goes back again to what you said around trust. People's inboxes are very, very important to them. And we need to make sure that it's the right information, organized in a way that they understand, easy to digest. Again, if I send you, James, a very long email, there's a summarize button that's right there for you. So is it known AI to the user? No, it's just a service that provides value to them.
So should brands, or do brands think of you as as a content company, or is that the right way to think about it? Or at least one facet of it?
Yeah, it's so funny. We're here at CES right now, and so many clients are saying, all right, what's the story? What's the message? So I want, from a marketing and advertising perspective, we want clients to understand that a lot of them know us from our DSP, which is a top 5 DSP. We won a bunch of awards this year. We actually made some big announcements today. You just had Roku on stage. We just announced today a partnership with Roku where they can now access a lot of our CTV inventory with this partnership with Roku. So clients are familiar with that. They're also familiar with our properties, but to be candid, a lot of what we're talking about today is to remind people of the Yahoo properties, what they can provide, what a great environment they are for advertisers. So I want them to think of us as sort of 2 distinct places. So you might have even seen the ads around the ARIA. We took over all the out-of-home area here just to make sure people know we have this incredible DSP for you to buy media across the open web, of course CTV, which is the fastest growing sector. And we also have these incredible award-winning iconic properties like news and mail, sports, finance, et cetera.
Does anything that you're doing feel like science fiction to you?
If I go back to some of the things we talked about around AI, let me give you one of my favorite examples. Full disclosure, I'm not a huge fantasy football person, but you know it is a huge passion. By the way, not just for men and women. Sure. This year we really infused AI to help you with your draft, to help you with things like who's available to be picked up this week on the waiver wire. You know, people do tons of research to really get in there. So AI is this incredible assistant that can find that one sleeper that you don't know about. And next thing you know, you're winning your fantasy football through the help of AI. It's pretty fascinating.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because I actually, many years ago, I used to work for a company that helped to create the automated recaps of your fantasy football game.
Of course.
And you would have this recap that it looked as if it was written by a human. And you know, that was AI, but obviously the ability to now generate content with much more sophistication at just a totally different scale has really come into its own. And I think the way that people thought about those recaps is now like what is actually possible now with kind of all that generation.
And they're getting very good.
And we never thought about, I'm not even sure we were thinking about like, oh, now you also have someone over your shoulder as like a guide to like how you pick this, and it's like your assistant coach or something like that. Sure, you can have AI elements for all of that.
Of course, and you know, think about any sporting event, right? The March Madness is coming up. You know, if you know the statistical odds of a perfect bracket, it's like 1 in a quadrillion.
I need some AI to help me with that this year, actually.
I'm terrible at it. But yeah, I mean, those are all manifesting in really interesting ways.
For you, what is 2025 going to be the year of? 2025 is the year of what?
Yeah, I'm hoping to hear more about it as we're here. I think there's 2 aspects that are super interesting, at least to us at Yahoo. Number one is, we're so focused, if you think about our DSP, you think about our properties, we're so focused on right ad, right person, right place, right time, all of that stuff. I'm hoping that there's more of a focus on creativity, the creativity in and of itself. We think there's an opportunity there for advertisers to do a lot more around more integrated sponsorships and packages, things that really capture people's attention, but do it in a really creative way.
Could that mean more risks? Is that one way of saying it? Like being more bold with your creative risks, or no?
I don't think so. In fact, Yahoo Properties, I would argue, might be the safest place to run an ad on the entire internet. There's nothing controversial. We don't have a ton of UGC that can get people into trouble. The curation that our DSP team has done around all of our supply to make sure that it's clean, it's safe, no MFAs, all of that. So I think we're the one place that people really don't worry at all about safety.
I think I cut you off. Was there another element that you wanted to bring up there?
Yeah, you know, whenever you come to CES, I always get struck with the same thing, which is there's so much talk about tech and automation, and I love it, and we need it. But then you come here and you remember that there's also a very human element to our business. I see you smiling. Monday night, we always host like a sort of a welcome event with Publicis, a big partner of ours. And we were all talking last night about how many people are just excited to see each other and catch up and see what's going on. So I am so pro-automation, pro-AI, pro-tech, but I'm also pro-human-to-human connection.
I mean, the pandemic taught us, even in the most pro-tech conference on the planet probably, we all still want to be here in person and rubbing elbows.
100%.
Last question, I know you work with an organization that helps underserved kids go to summer camp, or you worked with an organization like that.
Yeah.
Because speaking of the humanity element here, what's the case for summer camp in a tech-focused world?
Oh God, I will. You hit a huge passion point for me, so I'll try to be quick. Here's what I can tell you. I grew up going to summer camp. I met my wife at summer camp. All three of my boys go, and the thing that it teaches you the most is independence at an early age. So I went for 8 weeks by myself. When I was 6. So I don't know if you're a parent, but if you're a parent, the notion of sending your child away when they're 6.
My kids, 10 and 7, are going to a sleepaway camp for a month for the first time this summer. So
that's amazing. And it's a true blessing to give them that sense of confidence and independence. And I swear to this day, that was a long time ago. And I still think it serves me well in terms of how to get people excited, how to lead a team, how to get people bought in.
It's still all about people.
And of course it's all about people. And by the way, when they go there, I hope your kids have this experience. No tech, no phones. Let them learn how to engage. Let them learn how to be bored without the reflex of, let me go look at my phone.
I think we all need to go back to summer camp to relearn that lesson. After
anyone who works with me, they'll tell you, I lead like it is summer camp.
We need that. Rob Wilk of Yahoo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm James Kotecki, your host here at CES 2025 for many more conversations with advertising, marketing, media, and branding leaders here in the C-Space studio. Stay with us. Welcome back here in the C-Space studio here at CES 2025. I am your host, James Kotecki, and I am joined by Josh Madison, EVP Digital Operations at Disney Advertising. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it, James.
Okay, so everybody knows Disney Advertising. Give us a sense of the scope, where in the organization you fit, and kind of what all is within that purview.
Sure. I think the simplest way to look at it is Disney Advertising is responsible for all of the media assets where the Walt Disney Company sells advertising. So that's everything from ESPN to ABC to Disney Plus to Hulu, and we represent that holistically for advertisers in the market.
So we were talking just before we started rolling. You've been coming to CES for a while. What brings you to CES this year? What's your message?
Look, I've been coming to CES for almost 2 decades. I think this year feels incredibly relevant, both at an industry level, as we were talking about for a decade or so, it was largely just about screens. But now it's so much what people are doing with those screens, how consumers are interacting, and the core technology that kind of makes it all possible. So I think our core message at CES is really both to consumers and to the advertising community. I think for consumers, it's about in continuing to make the experiences that we make easily accessible to consumers. We have a lot of different services, a lot of different ways to interact with us. Yeah. And for advertisers, it's really about having the connections and interoperability that they require to drive their businesses. And increasingly, it's technology and data that drives all that. So there's no better place to kind of set the course for 2025 than do that here this year.
Yeah. What are some of the trends you're watching here at the beginning of this year?
Look, I think there's a number of trends. I think I'll speak about it both broadly, and then I'll talk about it within our business. I think broadly, there's no question, there's 2 dominant forces right now in video, and one is sports and one is streaming. And those 2 things are starting to converge, and they're converging also through the lens of live. Yes. And that means live sports, that means live entertainment, live award shows. Those are coming together, and that's a huge theme that kind of started last year, but is really kind of accelerating this year. And I think that we're certainly seeing that in our business, right? So we very intentionally brought ESPN into Disney Plus at the end of last year. We brought ABC News live into Disney Plus at the end of last year. And this year, we're just going to see live accelerate. So I think that's kind of trend number 1. I think trend number 2, just kind of zeroing in sports for a second, the rise of women's sports has been massive. We had a tipping point last year that was certainly the impetus of that was the NCAA women's basketball, but it's so much beyond that. I think women's sports broadly is having this transformational moment, and I think we all see it. And I was talking earlier to someone today about when we walked into a restaurant. You see all these TVs in a restaurant. And the person pointed out when you looked at every single screen, it was all women's sports.
All right.
And if you look back a couple years ago, that's never happening, right? So you see that happening, and that also converges with live and streaming, and that also converges with the NCAA, right? Yeah. So you have NCAA basketball, but you also have softball, you also have tennis, you also have lacrosse, you also have soccer, of course. And so I think all these things are converging as kind of a macro trend that just make it easier for consumers to watch what they want to. And women's sports isn't just about women watching other women. It's also men who are just interested in sports watching women's sports. That's another big trend that I see.
So making it easier for consumers, is it more and more challenging for brands than ever to reach the people that they want to reach? And how are you using data in order to do that?
Yeah, I think there's 2 parts to this. I think for a number of years now, brands have spent time getting their own data organized so that it can be useful across the market. Now, in order for them to use it across the market, they have to have interoperable partners. And I think about that as the opposite of the walled garden, right? The people who say, hey, we can do it all for you, brand. I think what we tend to say to brands is, hey, we're going to meet you where you're at and provide the tools or connections or interoperability that you need to do what you need to do, which then also, again, bridges into the role of technology. Because I think, increasingly now, you can look at, hey, I know a lot about my customers today as a brand, or I know about who I want to reach. I can use technology to build models about who those people are and then go start finding them more efficiently. And that's going to really revolutionize the whole media planning and buying process. And I still think we're in the early innings of that happening.
And tell me about how AI is playing into the way that you think about that, both now and in the near future.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, where if you picture just kind of, picture the recycling circle that you see on the side of recycling cans that show how things work. And now picture the process of planning media, buying media, measuring media. That entire process can be influenced by AI technologies. And I think it starts with understanding who you want to reach. As I meant, you can model lookalike audiences and use technology to do that. In our business, we deal in very large scale. So you're talking about tens of thousands of creative assets coming into our business that need to be reviewed for brand specs, the technical specs. We need to review that instantly and then serve that advertising into live environments through technology tools, and then an advertiser needs to know pretty instantly how it's working, right? And so your kind of legacy media models would take 60 or 90 days to prove their effectiveness. Brands and businesses don't have that time anymore. They need to know now what's happening. AI will impact that entire cycle. And again, I think about the quote in technology that people tend to overestimate the role of technology in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. I think that's very much the case here. I think there's very much a transformational shift happening in media.
And then to extend that, they underestimate it in the long term, and then when the long term arrives, they think, oh yeah, that just always would have happened that way. Or they don't even really realize that it's that magical technology from years ago, because we're just all so used to it at that point.
That's right, that's right.
How much does the magic, the cachet of the Disney brand play into this? Obviously you're talking about the kind of content, you talked about obviously so many different kinds of content and places that you show up, but is there a certain element of that plays into the way that you reach out to brands, interact with brands, or why brands come to you?
Look, I think it's hugely important, and I would just take the litmus test of sit on an airplane and tell someone you work for the Walt Disney Company. They will have an instant reaction to hearing the brand Disney. And then they will tell you a story, and that story depends, they're gonna go with their own personal experience. And so I think that is very, very real with consumers that all of us experience all the time. And I think for advertisers, the name and brand Disney is synonymous with trust. And so everything that we do, especially around data, especially around consumer privacy, all these things, there's no more trusted partner in media than the Walt Disney Company. And that's both a privilege and something we need to live up to every day.
I want to make sure we talk about shopping in media and the kind of convergence there. We could talk about things like retail media networks, and just the way that people can maybe shop items from their phones. If I see something that's on a streaming ad, I can now go buy that. Tell me about that convergence there and where Disney advertising is.
Well, I bet you, James, that if you and I asked everybody here if they've gone and scrolled on their phone and impulse bought something, we would get 9 out of 10 saying yes, that I've done that. Ask the same amount of people who've actually been watching their television in the living room and decided to impulse buy something. It's going to be nowhere near that. So the reason I bring that up is I think there's a massive opportunity that exists from the living room screen to our phones to actually buy things. And that process needs to be consolidated down to 2 or 3 steps for consumers to really make it easy. So the same way we were talking a little bit about international travel and skiing before this, but I have impulse bought many things related to skiing just because I'm watching, or I'm scrolling through something about skiing. That same thing can exist when I'm watching sports, when I'm watching television. And I think there's been a lot of early kind of work and tests, and certainly we've done that through QR codes and messaging to phones. But I think there's so much more opportunity to connect that beyond what exists today. So I think that's another kind of macro trend, but it's got to get down to 2 or 3 steps for consumers. And I do think that will happen. That's an inevitability. And the early signs are just, using QR codes, sending text message to your phone. That all works, but it needs to continue to get easier for consumers.
So maybe along those same lines, as we do see streaming services adopt more advertising as part of their models, do you see a future where we define an ad as something different? In other words, is the nature of an ad itself kind of changing to where it's a 15-second spot, it's a 30-second spot, but it's also something more integrated and
I love this question. Built? I love this question because look, I think for the past several years, everything about advertising has been audience, conversion, and I don't think that goes away. But I think what we're coming back to is the value of context and how I feel when I'm watching something. And this plays into technology is because literally in order to do that, you can see every single scene in every show, every live game, there's thousands of attributes that are happening on a page. How do you connect those into something that is more relevant to how people are feeling when they're watching things, right? And so we've made some announcements around this. Last year we announced something called Magic Words. And what Magic Words allows you to do is when you're watching something around and that it had travel involved in it or food, culture, whatever, we can directly sync the next message that a consumer sees back to what they were watching. So you take beyond just targeting James or Josh, but actually understanding how we might be feeling based on what we're watching. And so I think that that's something we're going to see more of in the industry, and then that combined with all the creative tools that brands now have to do multiple versions of creatives, to evoke different moods, you're just going to get better, more relevant advertising, because the thing is consumers don't not like advertising. They don't like it when it's bad or interruptive or disruptive or out of context. When it's in context and it makes sense for them, it works kind of for everybody.
So last question, 2025 will be the year of blank.
Acceleration.
Acceleration. Well, Josh Madison of Disney Advertising, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Talking to us about the great, big, beautiful tomorrow that's shining at the end of every day. Yes, I did get a Disney reference in there at the end. I'm James Kotecki. This is CES 2025, and we're talking to media, marketing, advertising, and branding leaders. And many more conversations are just ahead. Stay with us. This is the C-Space Studio. Welcome back. You're in the C-Space studio with me at CES 2025. My name is James Kotecki, and joining us is one of our longtime guests and favorites, Scott Peretti, President, Katz Digital. Thanks for coming back to the C-Space studio, Scott.
Yeah, so great to see you again.
Pleasure.
So we always kind of start the year with one of these conversations, and I'm always curious to see where Katz Digital is and what the brand means for 2025 now. So where's Katz Digital?
Well, we're always evolving it, but there are 3 words that we've come to really, I've beaten ahead of the team, but with curation, service, and performance.
Okay.
And those 3 words have come to guide our mission. Curating supply amongst all kinds of different media types, servicing it. We have 140 years of legacy at Katz. We've been in the business servicing customers. And performance, making sure that the campaigns that we sell on behalf of the advertisers perform.
And how is the fragmentation of all the media consumption that's going on changing or altering or impacting your approach to the way that you help your clients connect with their customers?
It's never ending as more and more ways to consume content emerge. In some ways it helps Katz because it makes our value to the advertisers more important in terms of our ability to kind of make sense of the supply and allow advertisers to reach the consumers that they're looking for. They need us, but it's a constant challenge, and we're always focused on how do we sort through that fragmentation and deliver it in a good way.
And what's the scope now? Tell us where are all the different places that someone could find an advertisement that was touched by Katz Digital?
So we're focused on 2 primary areas, audio and CTV, both of which we consider premium.
Yes.
And premium places to reach audiences. So, but amongst those arenas, they're on all different kinds of platforms consuming those content.
Yeah.
So
we can talk about audio, and we have talked about audio, but I understand CTV is relatively new.
It is. It's new to us. So we launched in 4th quarter a CTV product. And when I talked about those words, curation, service, and performance, that provided an easy entree into CTV. And really what we do is less about the audio products that we value and we see as important to sell, but it's really about finding audiences and consumers. And CTV is a great place for us to do that. And Katz as an organization has a large television business, and this is a natural to take advantage of the resources we have in-house to extend our product to that arena.
So having been really immersed in audio for so long, were there certain learnings or lessons that you could uniquely take from that as you built out the CTV part of the business?
Surprisingly so. I was fairly intimidated to start the process of getting into CTV. It's a fairly complex business, as you know.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of similarities. Really, it's about technology enabling, advertisers to reach people where they're consuming. Yeah. So the same way that they're consuming on a mobile device, to listen to something, they're watching it on a Samsung television, on a smart TV.
Yeah.
So
what do you recommend to brands who come to you and say, we know it's a fragmented world, we know that our consumers are everywhere, how do we break through, how do we reach them, and how do we hold and capture that attention?
Well, so it's impossible. Every advertiser has a different strategy. So what are they looking to accomplish? Is there a national brand and they're looking just to get awareness out about their product? Is it a new company? Is it a local QSR or fast food chain that's looking to drive college students to buy burgers? So it really is a different tactic that each advertiser is going to look for, and we take that, that tactic that we get from the advertising agency and then try to find the right ways and audiences that can deliver against what their KPIs are.
Yeah. And so how do you think about then the relationship between that data and that data-driven approach and human creativity?
Well, we have a saying at Katz, we talk about where AI meets HI, right? So we have this artificial intelligence and tools and data. We've talked about in the past our DMP called Kim, right? So our Katz Intelligence Manager that is unique to us in the ways that we target it. But we also are pretty creative in terms of the human intelligence and the people on board of dozens of years of expertise and that really know the products that we have and the customers we have to find those audiences and deliver that in a human way while we're taking advantage of all the data and capabilities that exist.
And are you getting pretty good? Are you learning ways to really make sure that one is augmenting the other as far as the human intelligence, the things that AI still can't do well, or the things that if you plug HI into the AI, it just does far better?
Yeah, every day we get better and better about understanding that. We get more experience in doing it. And by the way, that AI component gets better and better. Really helping us to curate and identify audiences and really capture the supply that works and is effective and the marketplaces that perform better for certain. And then we take that intelligence and then we use that to shape future campaigns to be more effective.
Speaking of supply, you mentioned the word premium, as the way that you describe what you're offering here. What does that actually mean? What does it mean to be premium in terms of the supply?
Well, so when I talked about premium before in that earlier question, it was about the place that people are listening to and the media content, right? So I think CTV as a, and audio are both premium places to be, but sometimes premium is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
So I could be listening to a podcast about travel in Madrid, places
just to take a random example.
Just to take a random example, right? And that content could be super premium to me because I'm passionate about it and I care about it. So sometimes it's in the eye of the beholder in terms of what premium means. But to us, it's about where are the consumers listening and how do we bridge that gap to find the audiences for the advertiser.
So could something be user generated and be premium, or does it mean that it's created by a professional? Is that part of it?
I think that's
Not
in the eye of the beholder, but if it's effective and it works,
as long as it's effective.
I think that's the key.
We mentioned different advertisers can have different goals, and if someone is saying they want to be in the national conversation or drive awareness, that could be very different from someone who wants to kind of target local markets. But how should advertisers be thinking about this, and how should even national brands be thinking about the United States as a country overall versus individual pockets of local markets?
So our expertise at Katz is local. So while we transact nationally and do it very effectively, with the scale that we have and the audiences that we bring to market, it makes the ability for us to target to a zip code effective. And so I think a lot of advertisers come to us for that. And we see a lot of value in being advertising with content in local markets. It really touches people where they are, and can, those associations can make an advertiser's message even more impactful.
A national brand, but speaking at a local level.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
I want to talk about audio a little bit more. Are there any technical milestones or things that you see evolving in the audio, and especially the podcasting space, that we should be looking out for in 2025?
I don't see a big breakthrough, right? And I think we're in many parts, audio is, because it's being transmitted and delivered on many devices. I think that's the breakthrough, and that continues to accelerate. But the basic means of audio and being passionate and how people listen to it and respond to it has been the same for decades.
People are listening to a lot of podcasts.
Right? They are, but then you go back to that curation. So it is overwhelming for a lot of advertisers, just the sheer volume of content that exists. So really being able to transact and deliver ads in that message, you need technology to do that, and that ability to find those audiences is really valuable.
And then are you able to now or in the future kind of cross-pollinate to where someone's listening to a targeted ad on a podcast, and then in a CTV situation, they might see something that crosses over and it kind of creates a more seamless experience for the brand and the consumer?
Bingo. We see that as our value in the CTV space. So we see being able to take our audio expertise in terms of what we know and delivering thousands and thousands of campaigns to that marketplace, being able to retarget those audiences in a CTV space where we know they've already been performed well. And so I think what we're going to see more and more at Katz, or we're expecting to see, is advertisers coming to us to look at advertising in both of those platforms and moving campaigns, impressions seamlessly around to ensure performance.
I think in the conversation around this interview, there was a discussion of a phrase, future-proofing an advertising strategy. Is that possible to do? The future's changing all the time. What does it mean to future-proof something?
I think from an advertiser perspective, is that what you're asking, Jake?
Yeah.
I think you have to have a consumer-centric approach, right? So that if your goal as an advertiser is really focused on the consumer, that gives you the freedom for the future to be able to move your advertising dollars to where they're consuming. So you have to pay attention. You've got to test and try different things, and you've got to be.
And I think people know that intuitively. Like, obviously, if you said that to anyone here, they'd say, "Oh yeah, I'm super consumer focused." But the fact that you bring it up like that makes me think, even if you know that, it's still sometimes a hard lesson to hold on to, because you can get caught up in the technology or the data or something else, and you lose that. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, but I think it's, again, sometimes people think about things the same way over and over again, and the way that they spend their money and the way that they advertise in has been, it's hard to get, especially the big budgets at big advertisers, to think differently, and they've been doing things that way. So you have to be more nimble. And again, you have to experiment a little bit. Be It's okay to fail a little bit and test things, and work with people on the sales side, like what we do, to be open. We see ourselves as less salespeople, but more as consultants with our advertisers. Where the goals are the same. We want to have effectiveness for the advertiser. We're kind of linked with the ad agencies that we work with, so lean into that relationship.
Well, one way that we can future-proof these conversations is to keep inviting you back to the C-Space studio, and I hope you'll join us again in CES 2026. Scott Peretti, Katz Digital, thanks so much.
It is always a pleasure.
And thank you so much for watching. This is the C-Space Studio, conversations with marketing, media, advertising, and brand leaders. I am James Kotecki. This is CES 2025. Stay here, because more great conversations are just ahead. Hey, welcome back to the C-Space studio here at CES 2025. I am James Kotecki. We're sponsored by Integral Ad Science, and we are joined right now by Ryan Gould, Head of Digital Ad Sales at Warner Brothers Discovery. Ryan, thanks for joining us today.
Very happy to be here.
Okay, so Warner Brothers Discovery, can we just start by giving our audience a sense of the scope of the different kinds of content, the IP, the different channels, so to speak, under that umbrella?
Absolutely. So Warner Brothers Discovery is essentially three companies wrapped into a new company, Scripps, Discovery Networks, and Time Warner. The simplest way to explain our company and the treasure trove of assets that we have is three different silos: news, sports, and entertainment. Yeah. News, obviously backed by CNN, sports with our the breadth and depth of our sports portfolio. And then entertainment has a handful of television networks, 2 streaming services with Discovery Plus as well as Max, and then a studio with Warner Brothers Television, and then a movie studio with Warner Brothers Theatrical Studio. So it's a really large company with a lot of assets that we try to make it easy for brands to weave their messages into the fabric of our experiences.
So tell me then about, from a storytelling and creativity perspective, really woven into the DNA of your company, how do you bring that to the brands that you want to work with, or that want to work with you?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we try to drive culture from a consumer perspective and give brands the opportunity to partake in us driving culture. Okay. More recently, we launched a product called Moments, which allows brands to contextually align with specific content environments, whether that's food and cooking, or travel, or do-it-yourself, or sports, or family. So again, we try to align our brand partners with culture-driving IP, but also endemically align their creative message to the right content opportunities.
I noticed that that's called Moments.
Yep.
Is it, if there's a food moment inside of a broader piece of content that maybe not all about food, but to that food moment, even for it's not a cooking show, can you kind of tie content within that moment, so to speak?
Absolutely. A brand will have the opportunity to surround food with Food Network with Warner Brothers Discovery, but also be able to target food scenes in a franchise like the White Lotus.
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
Fascinating. And so is that, we talk about contextual advertising and kind of being contextually relevant for the folks that are watching and for the brands. What advice do you give to brands there? Because you said that you drive culture and then you kind of invite brands to kind of come along for the ride, which seems like a good approach, but then how do you advise the brands that want to come along for the ride about how best to optimize that?
Yeah, so our internal studies show that 73% of our audience prefers when a brand message is aligned with relevant content. So again, there's infrastructure that's built in our industry to essentially buy based on audiences and demos, and I don't think that that should go away, but I do think that a little bit more time, energy, and attention should go along content adjacency, because not only does it perform for brands, but consumers prefer it as well.
Is there a fun example that comes to mind, or that when you're talking about this with people that you bring up?
Yeah, we recently on Food Network on Holiday Baking Championship, we were able to partner with Wayfair around their kitchen products. Again, we've worked with Wayfair at multiple different capacities. This was a way to grow that partnership, very specific around their kitchen product suite, which they wanted to highlight in the holiday season. Yeah. So it was good for people that had the shopping mindset. Yeah. It launched on Black Friday, not only to purchase for themselves, but also to gift give.
Well, I'm curious then about where we are with shopping and media and all of this kind of converging together. Where do you see the cutting edge, and where do you see the industry needing to go as far as integrating shopping more into the kind of content consumption experience?
Yeah, absolutely. We've known for years that advertising and our content and premium content has driven shopping behavior. There's just been so much friction and multiple hops in between being inspired and then taking action. with the rise of connected TV and second screen viewing with mobile while you're watching the big screen, we see a huge opportunity to mitigate all those hops and essentially drive action from inspiration in real time. Along with moments, we launched Shop with Max with Wayfair, which is out in market today, and we're really excited to launch that product.
And then how do you think about that, just maybe this is getting too granular and push back if it is, but from a perspective of someone who's watching a show, they see a product in the show that they might want to buy, how do you think about that from the needing to pause it perspective and kind of go buy that? Obviously you're minimizing the hops, but is that typically how someone would still buy that? They would pause it, or will we, or could we eventually get to a place where that's even more seamless? You just say, oh yeah, buy that, and it just kind of surfaces it for me to buy it later?
Yeah, first and foremost, we're in the business of pleasing our consumers, and we don't want to ever introduce an ad product or an ad experience that is not, doesn't enhance a premium viewing experience. So with Shop with Max, there's multiple ways that you can interact with the shoppability. We are very transparent from the onset. When you go to watch, let's say, the Holiday Baking Championship on Food Network on Max, we give the users a prompt like, hey, you can shop this show. You can either get your phone out and hit a QR code, or we can send you a product detail after the show's over where you can browse products of the show. So we're trying to build habituality with our shopping products to reduce any interruption through the viewing experience. Yeah.
So obviously you want to have an opt-in, you want to have it be privacy compliant and all that. Where do you think the mentality of consumers is right now overall when it comes to convenience, efficiency, privacy? In other words, where are we as far as people thinking about like the creep factor, and where are we like, yeah, people just accept this, they're excited about it, and they want this in their lives?
Yeah. I think from a consumer perspective, convenience is, top of mind. Yeah. There is definitely a cohort of consumers who are very conscious of their privacy and their data. And I feel like as an industry, we've done a pretty good job over the past few years of giving consumers not only the opportunity to opt out of targeting, but also we've been more transparent with what kind of information we're collecting and how we're using it. But I would say most consumers today want convenience. So if you show a relevant ad and an opportunity to learn more or push that consumer closer down the purchasing funnel, I think that mostly they appreciate that.
What are some of the other factors that you see as the streaming landscape evolves in 2025? What are any additional milestones that you're kind of looking at here as the technology and the overall experience continues to change?
Yeah, I think the rise of ad-supported streaming has been phenomenal over the past couple of years. And in addition to that, I believe that scaled live experiences in streaming are definitely something that's going to push the industry forward. Today, still most, if not all, scaled live streaming experiences are not dynamic ad inserted or enabled. So I think, once the technology and the comfort is there to actually introduce the AI in fully scaled live sports experiences, I think that that's going to be transformational for our industry. But I would say that, live experiences in streaming is highly scrutinized. So again, you have to get the stream perfect before you offer an enhanced ad load.
It sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you're saying that the tech challenges are less on the dynamic ad insertion side and more on just making sure the actual stream is really solid and everybody's getting what they want, and making sure that experience isn't diminished at all before you kind of put that dynamic ad that already kind of exists into that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It seems like the lines between different kinds of entertainment are blurring. And if you look at it from a consumer perspective, you talk about news, sports, entertainment. From a consumer perspective, is there a bit of a blur there where they just kind of think of it all as just content that I want to watch at any given moment? We can talk about the blur from a content perspective. We can talk about it from a technology perspective, where they want to watch what they want to watch, when they want to watch it, on the devices that they want to watch it on.
Yep.
So as you see all of this kind of converging, how do you make sense of it? And do you think that the silos or the categories that we have today are going to continue to be relevant going forward?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. We talked about convenience being, top of mind for consumers. They have an affinity to brands, and they want to interact with brands or IP across multiple channels, as well as different devices. I definitely think that how we sell advertising and how clients buy advertising today is very siloed. We're probably moving to a cross-platform partnership model sooner rather than later, and at Warner Brothers Discovery, we've offered these products in market for over a year now.
Last question, is there an upcoming or current piece of IP, a show, a movie within your ecosystem that you want to recommend to folks?
Yeah, we couldn't be more excited for The White Lotus.
Season 3
coming in the first quarter. And then this month, in January, we're super excited to partner on Unrivaled, women's 3-on-3 basketball tournament. So those are probably two of the franchises and IP that we're most excited about.
Okay, we're going to see athletic competition. We're going to see social striving and backstabbing competition maybe on The White Lotus. I'm not sure, but I'm sure people may not be entirely scrupulous on that show, and we'll definitely be watching in my house too. So Ryan Gould of Warner Brothers Discovery, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thanks, James. Really appreciate it.
And thank you so much for watching. This is the C-Space Studio. I'm your host, James Kotecki. More conversations are just ahead. Keep it here. It's CES 2025. Welcome back to the C-Space Studio, sponsored by Integral Ad Science. I am James Kotecki, your host. We're here at CES 2025 with two CES veterans, the co-founders of Viant Technology, Tim Vanderhook, CEO, and to his immediate left, Chris Vanderhook and brother, COO. Welcome both to the C-Space Studio. Thank you both for joining me.
Of course, thanks for having us, James.
Okay, so Viant Technology, how are you defining, Tim, the brand and what it means in 2025?
Yeah, for us at Viant, we're in the programmatic advertising ecosystem, and what everyone's talking about, not just within programmatic advertising, is artificial intelligence. And so late in 2024, we launched Viant AI, our first AI products that we brought to market to great fanfare, and really started paving the way to how programmatic advertising can use generative AI to improve the productivity of everyone. So for us, I think, and for most companies out there, our focus heavily is on AI and connected television, which is the hottest intersection. Those two is where brands are putting their money, and we're excited to deliver products there.
Chris, generative AI in programmatic advertising makes me think that AI is generating the advertising itself. Is that what you mean by that?
So not the creative yet. That's certainly where it's going. Yeah. That's going to be really exciting when that hits. But today we're using generative AI to really automate a lot of the arduous and rote work that happens in media. So think, media planning, developing the plan, the market research, who the target audience is. Think then building campaigns out in a DSP. That's a very heavy lift. And there's a lot of automation in these platforms to begin with, these DSPs like us. But generative AI makes it much more seamless. And really our North Star product, kind of vision is what we call autonomous advertising. Think like the self-driving car is to the automobile, that's what autonomous advertising is to a DSP.
So I just say, I want people to buy more baseball bats, and then the advertising system just figures out the rest.
That's the goal.
Okay.
Yes.
Tim, now what does the user interface for this product look like? Is it a chat thing where I'm actually chatting? Do I want to see dashboards if I'm in your industry more?
Yeah, I think what we're used to in the industry today, pre-generative AI, is a lot of dashboards. Every company has their own unique dashboards. Everyone wants to look at metrics. But what we found is that takes training, certification, learning how to use it, and there's a sense of anxiety that anyone who hasn't used it before, they don't know where to look or click. What our interface is, it's all a text-based interface. If you know how to chat, you know how to actually use our DSP today. These interfaces are game-changing because everyone knows how to use it out of the box. And now no longer do you need to log in, click 6 different web pages just to get the report you were looking for. You simply ask it, what's my campaign performance? And it gives it to you.
And are you finding that that's changing who is actually using and interacting with a product like this? Whether that's someone who previously has been untrained and maybe lower on the a lower level person, or an executive who also doesn't have the training and kind of wants that higher level.
Absolutely, it's everyone in the organization now has access to the information. Whereas before only 2, 3, 4 people inside of a small agency might know how to use a DSP and get that information for the boss. Now the boss can simply just ask the question and get the answer.
And Chris, does that change the jobs of the people in the agency who used to be those 2 or 3 people who had all the answers before? How do their jobs evolve?
Well, you get, anytime you're talking about AI, you get some uncomfortableness and people are at fear for their jobs. What I tell everyone is, the programmatic trader, that's a very difficult job, very tedious, a lot of responsibilities on that individual, and they may not be, it's not like these are PhDs and mathematicians. So it's typically someone who's doing a lot of the rote work, and I remind them, these are typically the jobs they don't want to continue doing forever, and they want to catapult out of it. And I think that in the end, though, what we're seeing is their job, their life in the job is actually getting much easier, and they're able to be more effective because they're using generative AI. It's like an assistant, really, to boost their own performance.
Let's talk connected TV and ad growth there. Where are we? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, connected TV is exploding. It has been for a few years, but where do we go from here? In linear television, there's still $50 billion being transacted across traditional television through set-top box, and we're seeing that migration from linear TV into streaming, and that's going to continue over the next couple of years. But we think CTV can be even bigger. Now you're able to track and measure the same way we do with search advertising, social advertising, and programmatic. You now have TV coming into that where it's measurable to a much larger degree than what linear television is. And we think this category, everyone pegs it at $70, $80 billion in the United States. That's just linear coming over, but we think with the gains of being able to optimize campaigns and drive better returns, we think that could double over the next 10 years.
Chris, do you still see people making mistakes or having the wrong assumptions when it comes to measurement and attribution in your space? Are there still out there people who are just kind of still doing it the wrong way, so to speak?
I would venture to guess that 65+% of all money spent in digital advertising is using what's called last touch attribution. At best case scenario, last touch attribution, and what that means is whoever showed the last ad and then the person bought, that last ad gets all the credit. So best case, if you're a marketer using last touch attribution, and we've been in the space for over 25 years, take it from us, we know this space. At best case, you're 95% wrong. And worst, you're completely 100% wrong. And the TV ad, and I remember 10, 15 years ago, we would watch marketers cancel linear television ads. And let's say I'm Ford. I cancel the linear television ad because I can't measure it, but when someone goes to Google and types in Ford F-150, wow, I can measure that and it performs really well. Buy more of that. That behavior has just gone on for the last decade and a half, and we think that it's really driving marketers to optimize and act on false signals. And so we really think that CTV actually now being measurable is being able to show the real impact of television. And it's causing marketers to change the way they measure their advertising now, which is really exciting.
It is exciting. Are there any who are having kind of doubts or second guesses about that? Like, oh, now that I measure it, I realize I was kind of doing everything wrong. I mean, I imagine there may be some in the industry who maybe have incentive, maybe is too strong a word, but maybe we still steer towards the other way of doing it because it protects certain things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, no one wants to look and say, hey, the last 5 years we've been doing something is completely wrong.
That's hard truth.
Yeah, that absolutely
Who
is.
wants to get fired?
But I think for us, it's about showing the truth, of being able to track that consumer journey from television ad exposure to Google search to the end advertiser's website, and then the product is sold. And there is value to Google. It's not zero value, but it's not all the value that they're getting credit for today.
Let's talk audio content for a second in podcasting. What's the positioning of your company there?
Big time. We saw last year streaming audio in 2024 got to about 10% of ad spend as of our last quarterly report that we talked about. And that 10% is up triple digit percentages. And so streaming audio is exploding. It's the fastest growing category, channel in programmatic advertising. It has a lot of the same look, feel, and performance as connected television, but it's even cheaper than CTV. And there's something special about AirPods in someone's ears, or when they're in their car driving, you have their full attention, and that is gold for advertisers looking to reach consumers.
And Chris, we talked about that Gen AI may eventually get to the point, or will get to the point where it's automating the creative. Will it be automating the creative in audio first? Do you think that seems like maybe one of the quote easier places to do it? To even do like a host read. You take the host voice and you automate an ad.
Yeah, the only reason why audio isn't 20% of spend in our platform, and I believe it will get there, is because there's a lack of creative that our clients don't have. Hey, I don't have the radio or the audio creative. And so we definitely see that AI. There are companies right now that are creating AI commercials for brands using the DJ's voice, or whatever, the podcast host. Some incredible stuff going on. So absolutely, and it's going to be very seamless. I think that we'll make ads in audio quicker than we'll make ads in CTV, because I think there's a lot. I think certain big brands are like, wait a second, I'm going to pump the brakes on you making my television creative, but audio creative seems pretty straightforward.
I want to ask you both for a prediction about the future, say 5 years out, that you believe that maybe others in the industry don't or haven't caught up to yet.
Well, it's the same mission that Viant's been on since we went public in 2021. We view the future of advertising as one of autonomous advertising. Chris talked about the self-driving car and automotive. In programmatic advertising, there's too many websites, apps, audience segments, places I could place my ad for a human to make the best decision. Computers are much better at analyzing the billions of opportunities that are out there to actually place the ad. We're going to measure the responses, and the AI is going to make changes on the fly. So we see, hopefully less than in 5 years, full autonomy is right around the corner, where we only need the human to say, I'd like to start a campaign.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll give you one that no one agrees with me, but it's definitely, I believe, going to happen. Over the next 5 years, Google search is going to lose share. Yep. And if you look at the amount of money that marketers are spending in search, as Tim said, it's not that it doesn't provide any value, it does. It just doesn't provide the level that they think it does. I believe that from the marketers that we see, about half of their search spend, typically of a brand, and they're all different, but are spent on branded search terms, their own brand term. They buy and they spend on that.
Right.
We believe that marketers are starting to realize that, wait a second, that was my TV ad that drove them there. This is just navigational search behavior. So I believe that Google search, in terms of their share of wallet with marketers, over the next 5 years will go down. I think the largest benefactor that's going to gain from that is CTV and audio.
Last question for either of you. What's it like to co-found and run a company with your brother?
Oh, it's a ton of fun. When you have a relationship as close as Chris and I do, I mean, we grew up sharing a room, and we've been negotiating who's going to shut off the bedroom light at night since we were 5 years old. So to be able to go into business together and be able to carry that same relationship over is really incredible for us. We've had a lot of fun doing it.
It'd be funny if you said, I totally disagree with that.
Yeah. A lot of people ask that
Remember,
question.
He works for me, I bet he does.
Yeah, a lot of people ask that question, like, you guys don't argue, you don't fight? I'm like, oh, no, of course we do. We argue all day long. However, the cool thing about working with your brother, you don't have to worry. He's not going to split. I'm not going to split. You can say anything to your brother. You can't, you may not be able to say anything to your sister, but you can definitely say anything to your brother. But no, it's a lot of fun.
Tim and Chris Vanderhook, co-founders of Viant, thank you both so much for joining us here.
Thanks for having
us.
And thank you so much for joining us and watching us here in the C-Space studio. I'm James Kotecki. More conversations are just ahead, so keep it here. This is CES 2025. Welcome back to the C-Space Studio, conversations with leaders about the future of human connection. We're here as part of CES 2025. I'm your host, James Kotecki, and joining me is Deloitte's China Widener, where she is the Vice Chair and U.S. Technology, Media, and Telecommunications Industry Leader. And did I get that right?
You did.
At Deloitte, so thank you so much for joining us in the C-Space Studio.
It's my pleasure.
So tell us what you're up to at Deloitte. It's a great title, but what does it actually mean in practice?
So in practice, what it really means is I'm responsible for our national technology and media and telecom practice. If you think about sort of TMT as an industry, it is the technology side of it creates the anchor for all things that media and telecommunications ultimately facilitate, that entertain us, that inform us. And that really is what the responsibility is to support and serve the clients who frankly entertain and inform you.
So what are some of the ways that work actually manifests itself? What are some of the things that you're advising on or doing for clients?
So clients are in an interesting spot right now, right? If you think about where we are with technology and its evolution, generative AI is on the lips of everyone. But the question becomes, how do you make that real? How does it go from an idea to something that is applied? And so we co-create with clients. We help clients facilitate their own transformations internally, because the reality is, while you might have the capacity and ability to embrace the technology, if your own infrastructure, if your own core hasn't necessarily evolved over time because you put all your energy into your product, right? So it can be back office and in-house, it can be front office and co-creation. It really depends on what a client needs.
I know everyone's talking about generative AI, and I know that you think a lot about generative AI. So let's talk about that. How is that impacting your business and what your clients are doing? And is it making it harder for people to trust what they see?
So here's what's interesting. Just this past year, we did our TMT prediction study, and in that research, part of what we discovered is that 73% of people are concerned. And what they're concerned about is really whether or not, one, bad actors will in fact take bad actions on them. And the second thing they're concerned about is the service provider's capacity to protect their information, right? And so when you think about it in that context, what you realize is the industry is faced with a challenge. How do we in fact help people adopt, right, the benefits that generative AI brings forward, and yet protect privacy and secure data along the way? And so when you think about those two things, who is in the middle of all of that are you and I, right? Both as consumers and users, and the people who need, in fact, to benefit from the services and the solutions that it brings, but don't really want to give up all of our privacy to do so, right? That's the challenge. And so is it harder? It is harder, but I think there are ways in which really the industry can step in and ultimately make that less hard.
And what do you think are some of the ways that are emerging to kind of solve or mitigate that?
There are really two: transparency and control. The first of which is you need to understand transparently what data, in fact, your service provider has. Part of that study, same study, also identified the fact that most people believed the policy was unclear, right? And so transparency, step one.
They believe that the company's transparency policy was not transparent, so to speak.
That is a way to say it, yes, right? It wasn't easily understood, right? And then the second aspect of that is, how do I control my data? I'm willing to give you access to my personal data, and I'm willing to allow you to use that data in certain ways, but I want to be able to say to you that there are ways that I would like you to and ways that I don't want you to.
It would be such a game changer if we all had that conversation with brands and companies in maybe a more proactive way, and frankly, just speaking as a consumer myself, in a way that was more on my own terms, not like when I'm frantically clicking on some website because I need some information, and then pops up this privacy thing, and now I have to do I take, I kind of know I should look at that, but at the same time, I'm kind of just like, okay, accept, and kind of move on. And are there ways maybe that hopefully we can see in the future of having a more reasoned, kind of deliberate conversation around these issues?
Yeah, and I think every company will make a choice consistent with its culture, its policy, its standard relative to how proactive they believe is important or necessary to be. But you're exactly right in terms of this notion of, we all sort of go, oh my God, I need to know right now, so I have to click yes.
Yeah.
But the reality is, and I believe that what the industry is beginning to understand, is that people do want to know earlier in the process.
Yeah.
Whether they remember, whether they hold on to it is a different question, but they do want to know. And so I think what we're going to see is a much more public push, right, to say this is our policy, this is our practice. It may not be all the legal words, because nobody's going to read all the legal words, but being able to communicate it in a way that the average consumer can say, I understand where you stand, I understand where my control is, and that I have some, and I know how to access it. And that alone will change the trust paradigm.
And maybe we'll use generative AI to help understand these policies or summarize them or things like that. Can we talk about on-device AI? So a lot of the generative AI that we're talking about now, and AI generally, might take place, in the cloud. And when we talk about AI actually moving onto people's individual devices, how does that change the game for consumers as you see it?
So we think 2025 is going to be a very interesting year for exactly that set of reasons. We're going to get answers to exactly that question, because what we anticipate is that AI on device, think laptop, think phone, we're going to see more of that. 50% of laptops coming out in 2025 are likely to have AI chips in them. And so we're now going to have what I would call a test in the wild, so to speak. Right, we expect laptop sales to increase single-digit percentages, but increase nonetheless because of this new solution and opportunity that's going to be provided as a result of these chips, because people want that. We know 24 to 45-year-olds are actually willing to refresh their technology, right, with the services embedded in it. They're going to be our first test bed. To say, did the problem that it solved for me, was it really valuable to me? Do I want more? Do I want different? Was the quality what was expected? And that's what we're going to see.
And for people who maybe aren't as familiar with this, is it really expected that if I do some kind of chat interface on a device that has AI embedded within it, I'm actually going to get better answers? Or is it the promise there that I can get answers that are maybe more personalized to me because I've had it on my own device?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? So if you think about, let's take a typical thing that you or I might do on any given day, which is to say, oh, I think I want Chinese right now. And maybe you're in a different part of town and you would in fact search for Chinese. Well, the use case will brings you back a list of restaurants, and maybe it'll tell you how close you are to them. In the future, what it really will do is to say to you, based on your prior preferences as understood and known by your prior searches for other things, here's not only a list of restaurants, but then to give you a better sense of which ones are more likely to meet your need. So it's both personalization or customization, as well as a better response relative to the shorter list. I don't need the list of 100, I need a list of 5, right? Because I want to make a decision
5
today.
that matter to me, where is Deloitte on the topic of diversity, equity, inclusion? It's an interesting time for DEI initiatives. Sometimes the phrase is very politicized. Companies may be seeming to be backing away from it. Where's Deloitte now?
Look, the industry's in a mixed place, right? Just fundamentally, I think the world, quite honestly, is in a mixed place. And for all kinds of reasons, companies will make sets of decisions to reprioritize or deprioritize, as the case may be. For us at Deloitte, we're steadfast in our commitment. We believe, without question, that there's a business imperative. The degree of innovation that you get with diversity is extraordinary and strong, and therefore it contributes to both your top and bottom line. And at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is investment. It's investment in leadership development for people. It's the investment in mentorship and sponsorship for people. And ultimately, it's the capacity to say, I am hiring all who come to me with a set of skills that are valuable to the clients that we serve. And that, at the end of the day, is really the simple and committed message. Now, here's the other piece to that. You want to be effective. So we should, and we do, evaluate our practices and the programs that we have in place so that we can continue to do those that actually have impact, and we can stop doing the ones that don't.
I did a little research on your background. Am I right, early in your career you were a prosecutor?
I was.
Do you still have that mentality, or does any of that shape the work that you do today or the way that you think about the future?
It does, actually. It's interesting because what I would tell you is at this moment, there's sort of an interesting intersection between the days of being a prosecutor, which if you think about it, my client was the public, right? That's who I served and who I was responsible for and answering to. And where we are today in the things that are available to us, the opportunities and the challenges, they have a social impact that is much broader, quite honestly, than any one company, than any one of us.
Yeah.
And so this notion of how do you do the job that is before you with that broader social construct in mind is really sort of that integration. And it makes for a very interesting set of conversations, which is not just can we, should we? And both questions are important.
Well, thank you for sharing an interesting conversation with us, China Wagner of Deloitte. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
And thank you so much for watching. This is the C-Space Studio. I'm your host, James Kotecki. Please keep it right here because more conversations at CES 2025 are coming your way. Welcome back to the C-Space Studio, sponsored by Integral Ad Science here at CES 2025. My name is James Kotecki, and joining me are two fantastic guests. To my far left, Brett McMickle, Chief Technology Officer at Kubota North America, and to my immediate left, Walter Flock, VP Innovation, Western Growers. Gentlemen, welcome both to the C-Space Studio.
Thank you for having us.
Brett, we'll start with you because you're the returning guest, our returning champion, so you get to start first. Can you just quickly define Kubota North America, what your brand means here in 2025, and maybe just tangibly what you're doing here at CES?
Oh, I appreciate it. So this is the second year for Kubota to come to CES, and this year we're expanded the exhibit, showing more of our products from construction, agriculture, residential. But really what we're highlighting is the innovation cycle, that is listening to customers, understanding their needs, developing products, and then iterating on those products. And you'll see that with AgriConcept 2.0. So it's an evolution of what we brought last year. We listened to our customers. We now offer manual control and automation. But also, we're looking at the full work cycle. A lot of companies are looking at individual technologies, but not looking at the entire workflow. And so that's another aspect that we're highlighting this year, is how all of these connect together and really focusing on solving real solutions for our customers.
And when you talk about that vehicle that you're bringing, people might call it an autonomous tractor, right? It's probably not the right way to actually frame it. It's more than that, right? It's the idea of, well, I'd like you to define it actually.
Yeah, so last year we really highlighted the autonomy, and the feedback we got is that utility tractors are used for a wide range of tasks. And our customers wanted the ability to operate the tractors manually, as well as have the option to do autonomy for some of the tasks that are more repetitive. And so that's where you're seeing an advancement this year. The other advancement is on how customers interact with the vehicle. A lot of customers were kind of overwhelmed with all of the capability. And so what we did this year is we've really expanded the human interface using artificial intelligence and voice enabled in order to understand the intent of the customer and configure the vehicle for them. And then the other part of that is an autonomous vehicle is operating with humans. And so how do we provide that human interface so the human knows what the tractor's doing and the tractor can kind of communicate back to the human? So you're seeing different LEDs across the vehicle, LCD displays, trying to help with that communication with the autonomous vehicle.
This idea of bringing humans more into the mix and kind of what it actually looks like on the ground in the field is very apt, and we're going to get more into that. But first, Walt, I want you to tell us a little bit about Western Growers and what you're up to.
Sure, so my membership is basically the 2,000 plus fruits, nuts, and vegetable growers. So they grow all that cool, healthy food that we like. And the intersection with that and ag tech is how do we solve the labor problem? It's with products like Kubota's and other manufacturers, John Deere, AGCO, Case New Hollands, and a lot of startups. So our job is to get them commercialized, get them into the trials, get them into the case studies, get them into the economic templates so that growers can analyze the tools like the cool sprayer you guys have here in R&D mode. And then validate for the farmers which ones are working and which ones work at other farmers' economics so they can then pattern detect and recognize what works in their own economics, then try before they buy, and then buy hopefully, because they need the help.
Here in the C-Space Studio, we talk a lot about messaging and branding. Is there a messaging mismatch, or at least I should say, are there areas for improvement in how companies like Kubota need to reach members like yours in terms of the messaging that's going, in either direction?
It's part messaging. I think any messaging that doesn't focus on use cases and user economics, and I do see some of that here at CES and some of that at the ag tech shows, probably isn't going to get there.
So in other words, we don't like high-minded, pie-in-the-sky conceptual robot ideas. We like real on-the-ground, in-the-field practical things.
The joke among my ag tech friends is farmers are not aspirational. So they don't aspire to do anything but make the economics on the farm better. So they're boring customers, but they're reliable customers, and if you prove that it works, they will buy, which is great.
Well, then let's talk about an aspirational technology whose time may have come, and we are able to kind of apply it in interesting practical ways, which is AI. We talked about autonomy and the kind of mix between human and machine interface there. In general, what do your customers expect from Kubota when it comes to AI? Are they thinking in those terms necessarily?
Well, AI is providing, I think, it's going to allow us to bridge into the insights. In the past, a lot of the farm management systems focused on providing data. And what we found is we're overwhelming the customers with data and they're not finding the economics. And so you listen to the customers, the growers, they really have a job to do. They don't have time to go out in the field and come back and analyze a bunch of data. And so the customers are expecting us to provide the recommendations. So the artificial intelligence right now is allowing us to pull together insights from across the field, from weather data, and provide insights, both from the yield as well as some forecasting. So you're just starting to see that. The next step's going to be, how do we take that recommendation and that insight and act on it? And trying to connect the autonomy and the AI, that's going to be the big unlock.
Yep. And Walt, let's imagine that AI does what we want it to do in a practical way. What does the farm of the future, or at least the near future, look like there? What is a farmer, what is a grower in your organization now able to do in the next couple of years that they can't do now?
I think two things. I think from a function perspective, they'll be able to do more weeding with robots, more planting with robots, more spraying with robots, and more harvest assist to help the crew move the stuff around. Yep. I think long term, maybe not 1 to 2 years, but maybe 3 to 5. I think what's happening in technology is so interesting, and I'll take it back to the 90s. When we moved from browsing and portals to search, we changed user behavior across every activity, right? Yeah. Going from search and those 10 blue links on Google, which was one of the best economic engines ever created, to a context relevant search result with AI tools, and I'm using a couple of them every day now, that's really going to reset the farmer's expectations. So I agree with Brett. I think these farmers don't want just data, they want the actionable recommendations, and the new tools like ChatGPT and Gemini can start to get there, and I think that's going to be huge. So I think we'll see the benefits on the functionality. Later, we'll see the benefits on farmers actually demanding more context-relevant answers, i.e. recommendations for what to do next for planting.
You can imagine an AI. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Brett.
I'd like to jump in on that. I mean, one thing that he mentioned as well, in the near term you're going to see, is more of the assist. A lot of people are focused on completely automating the farm. That's a big ask and a big lift, and I don't honestly think it's going to be hard to get the trust of the farmers, even if it worked. So having this as augmented automation, something that provides like assistive on the harvest, because I mean harvesting is really difficult, but there's a lot of opportunity there to really get some efficiency improvements just by providing information, assisting the farmer on growing decisions, spraying decisions, as well as harvest through the entire cycle. So I think the assist is more near term versus the full automation of the farm.
And even though, as you said, you may not want to surface all of the data at that level to the individual grower, your machines are able to collect a ton of data. Can you talk to us about the scope there of what you're able to collect?
Well, I think that's also why you're seeing this. Well, one is why this partnership with startups is so important, is the OEMs offer scale. And our vehicles are on the farm all the time. And so we're able to collect the data. Now, the important part is, in bridging that gap, is providing the recommendations. And so we're trying to accelerate that. So recently we acquired Bloomfield Robotics, for instance, that's bringing not only a sensor platform that we can integrate into our tractor, but also the artificial intelligence to provide really actionable recommendations in a grower-friendly dashboard.
I want to talk a little bit more about how messaging changes behavior in terms of marketing trends that you might hear about in the grocery store, like organic, regenerative, sustainable, locally grown, all of these buzzwords. I mean, again, when we talk in the C-Space studio to a number of marketers and agency types here about this kind of stuff, how does it actually go down to the level of what the individual grower is doing? How should folks who are in this studio as marketers think about how their terminology and messaging is going to actually impact on the level of the field?
So I think it's an open question, right? I think the organic lessons are instructive, right? So organic took a long time to get the messaging right, took a long time for it to mean something to consumers. Regenerative is going in possibly that direction, possibly a different direction. I think everyone in the ag tech space needs to be clear about what organic and regenerative are going to be, and the messaging opportunity is probably more on the retailer side than the ag tech equipment side. So it's the store people and the restaurant people that want to market that the right way. In terms of what that does for ag tech, the more organic and the more regenerative you have, a lot of times the more labor you need to throw at the solution, and labor is only getting more expensive, so only more opportunity for ag tech to come in and sort of solve the problem with technology instead of labor.
And looking at this, I mean, from a marketing standpoint, just kind of turning it around and looking at bigger context, is with the ability now to take comprehensive data, with the ability to transmit that data into recommendations and track it through the entire food chain, will enhance efficiency, but I think there's opportunity in tying that strawberry all the way back to the producer. So there might be a real change here as we get more transparency through the entire food chain.
You can use generative AI to help grow. We can use. Can we just throw the blockchain in there? Maybe we can like track something through.
There you go.
There's all sorts of opportunities here.
Well, the traceability part is real, and that's exactly right. So Brett's right. If you can track it back to the consumer, obviously you help from both the consumer perspective, messaging-wise, and from a food safety perspective, because we can minimize the impact of things like recalls.
And the efficiency. I mean, there's so much food loss along that food chain right now, and it's really inefficient. And it's due to the lack of transparency, the lack of data, the lack of standards. And so that's one area that we're looking at, is as we're collecting the data now through the sensors, we can look at the quality of the crop and getting the timing right, so we get the distribution right and trace that all the way back to the end customer, I think is going to be really impactful on the efficiency of that food chain.
I'll ask you both to fill in the blank to close us out here. 2025 will be the year of blank.
I think 2025 is going to be the year of a lot of infrastructure getting built around technologies like AI, all the investment in the stuff I mentioned earlier, the NVIDIAs on the chip side, all the plumbing. We're where the internet was in 1992, right? So all the plumbing gets built, then all the applications show up, your e-commerce, your search, your social networking. So we're still a couple years away from that, but a lot of plumbing gets built, and a lot of early startups get started now that are a big deal in 3 to 5 years, we hope.
And Brett?
Yeah, I think 2025 is where you're really going to see AI provide that augmented assistive recommendations. So we're going to start building the trust this year, applying AI to the data sets we have. So I look forward to 2025 as we start deploying this and really making an impact on the farming community.
Well, we look forward to checking back in a year and seeing what the impact was. Walt, Brett of Western Growers and Kubota, respectively. Thank you both so much for joining us here in the C-Space studio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching. My name is James Kotecki. I'm your host for these conversations here at CES 2025. We're talking to marketing, media, branding, advertising, thought leaders, basically geniuses of all kinds. And I can't wait to have more conversations, so stay with us. This is the C-Space studio. Hey, welcome back. This is the C-Space studio here at CES 2025. I am James Kotecki, joined by the Chief Revenue Officer of Reddit, Mike Romoff. Mike, welcome to the C-Space studio. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Reddit, I think most people would be familiar with Reddit, but I'm always curious to ask people how they define the brand. So what does Reddit mean, especially going here into 2025?
Yeah, so Reddit at its core is a community of communities. It's where people can come and have authentic conversations with other people who are interested in the things that they're passionate about. Yeah. It's like 100,000 different communities, all vibrant, with people coming and really just sharing their expertise, the things that they get really passionate about.
And it's also, do you still use the phrase front page of the internet? Do you still adopt that?
Reddit is for sure the front page of the internet. I think Reddit's been having a cultural moment. I don't know if you've seen it, but I started at Reddit about a quarter ago, and pretty much everyone I meet and I tell them I work at Reddit, they say, you know, I find myself on Reddit a lot these days. Yes. You know, I start out searching for something and I end up on Reddit, or I go to Reddit because I'm interested in this topic. And I think Reddit's been doing its thing for a long, long time, and the rest of the world has kind of moved closer to Reddit.
It's a rabbit hole in a good way.
Yeah. In a good way.
And actually, when I was preparing this interview, my wife literally said, "Oh, James, you love Reddit." So yes, I am one of the users of Reddit, one of the many.
I appreciate that.
As well. And so what brings you here to Reddit is no stranger to CES, of course, but what especially brings you here to CES 2025?
So, you know, this year we're talking about the power of conversations, and the way we talk about it is conversations really drive decisions. On Reddit, so much of what we talk about, or what our users talk about, is inherently commercial. So almost half of the conversation that happens on Reddit is about what product should I buy, or I tried this and I think it's awesome. And those authentic recommendations drive so much decision making and purchase intent. So look, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer. We have a huge ads business. When I think about how brands can get involved with Reddit, it's really about engaging at the point where people are making decisions, getting informed, and deciding what they want to buy.
And then how does that authenticity then pair with the way that ads show up for folks on Reddit? I mean, I know that one of the ads that people can buy on Reddit is something that looks not too dissimilar from a regular post. Obviously, it's marked as a sponsored piece of content.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm curious then from the consumer perspective, how they treat that and how they kind of engage with those kind of pieces of content.
For sure. I mean, look, at the core of Reddit, it's about having engaging conversation, whether that's consumer side or whether that's commercial. It should be appropriate and it should be additive to what's happening. So Reddit has like a famous ad format called Ask Me Anything, AMA ads, and it lets a brand really engage with their fans directly. And it's unique among, I think, all the platforms in fostering a sense of real community, not just among the people who use your brand, but with the brand itself. And I think there are ways to bring that authentic message and frankly have a two-way conversation from the advertisers themselves, but also with the folks who are potentially using their products.
The format is called Ask Me Anything. Yeah. So does that then imply that if a brand wants to engage in this space, they have to be willing to take questions, maybe questions they're not comfortable with, and really be authentic?
Look, for an AMA, I think to show up authentically, you win the respect of the community. Yeah. There's a great example. There was a small business selling diaper bags, and they did an AMA with us. And one of the questions was, why are your diaper bags so expensive? And rather than try to shut it down, they went through all the proof points. So there's a lifetime guarantee, the materials are really great. And it actually starts to be a two-way dialogue about the value prop. And I think if done correctly, it's a really powerful way to build trust and authenticity with potential customers.
What are the brands that work with you expecting from Reddit when it comes to AI? And I'm not sure if they're thinking, I want AI to do, maybe they're just thinking about the benefits, but what are the things they're expecting that AI is able to deliver?
I mean, Reddit was built for AI. I think if you were trying to construct the perfect thing for AI, it would be a 20-year history of human conversation about almost every topic you can imagine, with people's upvotes and downvotes that you can use to train models, that you can use to target ads against. And I think the market has recognized how powerful that asset is, and Reddit, we've recognized how powerful it is. So from a consumer perspective, coming into Reddit, we've launched something called Reddit Answers. And you can think about that as a point of entry into all the richness of all the communities and conversations across Reddit. It's a simple search box interface that everyone's seen, but the difference is instead of having a AI sort of created answer, it actually helps steer you to real human conversations that answer your question. And so that's one of the ways that from the consumer side, we're really opening things up. On the advertising side, I mean, driving towards performance is the biggest place where AI shows up. We have so much signal about what people are interested in, what they're engaging in, the kinds of products that they like. To be able to bring that to bear for our advertisers, that's a huge use case for AI.
Where are we at the intersection of shopping and media and Reddit? What are the milestones you're looking for in 2025?
Well, look, Reddit has launched a number of what I would consider industry standard ad products, so that we really can have dynamic product ads, be able to really compete in the commerce space. But the real secret sauce is the authenticity of the recommendations and the conversations. We fielded some research, and 40% of the people we surveyed said that a recommendation for a brand or a product on Reddit was the most influential thing that caused them to buy a product. 40%. So we know that we've got an engaged audience that is literally recommending either your product or your competitor's product. And so if you're an advertiser, you want to be at that point where people are making that decision.
Given where we are with privacy and with cookies, what is Reddit's philosophy about advertising with respect to that, and then how that fits into the future of the industry?
I think Reddit is contextual and interest-based. And so the targeting that we do is not based on individual information. We don't have PII. We're an anonymous platform. So the changes that have come, or the changes that have been contemplated around identity and all the regulation around PII, that's not really relevant for us. We know on an anonymous basis that you're part of a community around skincare or a community around cars, and you engage in certain topics. For us, it's business as usual. So the industry, I think, is grappling a lot with how to deal with the changes in identity and what's happening with regulation. For Reddit, that's just business as usual.
And that anonymity is kind of a core part of it, right? Like the idea of an anonymity behind a username. I imagine that's a core part of it.
I think one of the things that's a bit counterintuitive is that under the being anonymous, you're much more open to talk about topics that you wouldn't be open to talk about under your real name. So, our CEO, Steve Huffman, his classic line is, everybody has a rash. And so when you go on Reddit and you have a condition, you want to talk to other people who have that condition, it's much easier to do when it's not your face and name underneath that. And there are a lot of really robust communities around cancer and cancer survivors, people with different ailments, and then obviously lots of fun stuff where people get to talk about sports and everything else.
Yeah, we know that Reddit is a hugely vast and diverse place. We know that tech audiences are diverse. We can see that here at CES. How do you recommend that brands find and reach the right niche communities, the niche subreddits that they need to be in?
So almost every topic is resident on Reddit. And so what feels niche, when you go and look and see the community that's vibrant there, we may actually have a huge community of users that are talking about that very niche topic. Yeah. So like if you're a CRM person and you think that's a niche tech audience, well, you can go to the Salesforce admin subreddit. You can go to the r/CRM subreddit. You can go into all these different categories and topics where there's a community of people who are actively expert in that topic, evaluating different products in that niche. And so from an advertiser perspective, that's the core of where you want to be. And then we can reach those people across the Reddit platform when they're whole humans, when they're pursuing their other interests.
So maybe something for brands to keep in mind is as niche as you think you need to be, you can even maybe get narrower than that and actually have a lot of success because there are those communities.
Look, I think you can find it. And then I think the work from there is to understand how else you can reach that same community broadly across the platform.
So we talked about Reddit being an anonymous place, and not to give up any secrets, Mike, but do you have any favorite subreddits of your own, or there's places that you want to recommend to people, your favorite niche topics?
I have one if you haven't. I'm a musician, so our synthesizers, which is a place for gearheads to get crazy about different electronic music recording.
Moog lovers of all kinds.
I mean, that's amazing. But if you haven't checked it out, Photoshop requests is one of my favorite. And some of them are poignant. It's basically where people can ask the community to Photoshop different photos. Some of them are super poignant. It's a photo of a grandma who passed away and they wanted to remove something out of it or put another person in it. And some of them are just super fun. It's just a guy pranking someone by making it look like his car got flooded. But I love that one.
A lot of good emotional moments there. Or as they say on Reddit, someone's cutting onions in here. And Mike, I really appreciate you sharing this conversation with us. Thank you so much. Mike Romoff of Reddit. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And we really appreciate you watching us here in the C-Space studio at CES 2025. More conversations are on the way. I am James Kotecki. Stay with us. Hello once again, I'm James Kotecki here in the C-Space studio at CES 2025, and joining me is Jeff Collins, President of Advertising, Sales, Marketing, and Brand Partnerships at Fox Corporation. Jeff, welcome to the C-Space studio.
Yeah, thanks for having me, James.
Okay, so Fox Corporation, Fox, I'm sure most everybody here has a passing familiarity with the brand overall, but what does the brand mean here in 2025 as you see it?
Yeah, listen, I think certainly I could speak on behalf of our advertisers and how they view the brand, and I think it's really as a focused portfolio of best-in-class assets. And I think, you know, when folks think of Fox, some of the first things that come to mind are really big events, mass reach events like a Super Bowl, right, or a World Series, or best-in-class sports. Then certainly on the news side, you have huge scaled events as well. So Fox does a really good job covering these massive events that are huge mass reach events for advertisers that they value, but also just on a day-to-day basis, the day-to-day reach that Fox delivers for our clients is massive in scale. So it's a matter of, I think, for a lot of folks when they view our portfolio, we have a lot of the things that they're looking for right now, which is live content, best-in-class streaming out there, and not a lot of the things that they don't want that are not as desirable. So I think that's what people think of Fox.
And what brings you here to CES this year? What's your message here for folks?
Well, listen, I think we're talking about a lot of things this year at Fox. So I think, you know, certainly we're talking about a lot of the new technology that we have out there on the 2B side of the house and what we're doing across the Fox portfolio from a new tech perspective, how we're able to control frequency across the entire portfolio at Fox for a lot of our advertisers, new ad formats that we're rolling out. As you know, CES tends to be a lot more tech focused. So that's a big focus for us this year here.
Talk to me a little bit more about 2B. Can you remind folks kind of, that was an acquisition, I believe, is that right? 2B?
2B was an acquisition.
Yeah, and exactly, when did that happen?
Yeah, the 2B acquisition was about 4 years ago.
Oh, okay, so it's kind of well
exactly,
well immersed.
Yeah, it's been with us for a while.
In the situation.
It's part of the family.
Okay. What is exciting to you right now at the intersection of shopping and media and content and advertising and all these things coming together, but especially from the perspective of being able to shop things that I'm seeing on the screen in front of me?
Yeah, listen, I think so much has been written about the benefit for our advertisers and our clients, and certainly we see that, and we're thrilled to be able to offer our clients the ability through our IP to be able to help sell their product, and that's a huge advantage. We look at it another way though too, and it's really a great opportunity for our clients or for our audiences to be able to connect in a deeper way with our IP. So if you think about a show like Gordon Ramsay, right? When we're able to actually allow the folks that are viewing, the fans that are viewing Gordon Ramsay, to be able to not only get the recipes, but then be able to purchase the products that Gordon's using, purchase the ingredients that he's using on air, it adds a whole new level of connection to the actual brand of Gordon himself and makes those fans even more loyal. And of course, you have the added benefit of our advertisers get to sell a lot of their products as well, which is fantastic.
And is your pitch to brands that you can kind of be their one-stop shop if they want to get these kind of audiences, that you can kind of deliver all that. Because I guess, to step back for a second, one thing that people might wonder about if they see all the interviews, those C-Space super fans out there, if they see all the interviews here, they're hearing from brands, they're hearing from entities like yours, but they're also hearing from a number of agencies and technology partners, and all of them are kind of making different claims about, like, we want to be the one to kind of shepherd you through this ecosystem and get you to the final consumer. So what's your pitch to brands, and how do you stand out among all the other folks who are also making that similar pitch, that we can be the ones to help you reach your audience?
Yeah, listen, I don't think there is any one-stop shop for advertisers anymore. I think what Fox does, and what Fox does very uniquely, is deliver fans, fans that are highly, highly engaged for advertisers. And that's, people think of fans and they think of that word right away, they automatically go to sports.
Yes.
But of course, we have fans across the entirety of the portfolio. We have news fans and news junkies that tune into Fox News on a daily basis and are very, very tied in with our talent on a daily basis. On the entertainment side, I mentioned Gordon Ramsay's shows like The Masked Singer, true fans of that type of content. And then of course on Tubi, we actually have fans of the Tubi platform. So I think a bit of a differentiator for Fox, and the thing that we like to point to, is it's not just consumers that are sort of idly watching, it's truly lean forward engaged fans that are very, very highly engaged with the overall content, which ultimately leads to a better advertising experience.
Is there I don't want you to give away the magic too much, but is there like a driving force, an engine that's actually creating all of this content and these kind of fandoms? That's a really precious thing, right? And to be able to claim that, and honestly claim that, and have that, is a really precious thing. So what's the magic, what's the secret sauce that's driving that, and how do you make sure that that continues? Because obviously we're in an era where there's so many things competing for people's attention.
Yeah, I think our philosophy has been focus, and doing the things that we can be best in class at. And if you really focus on the things you can be best in class at, you could actually attain those fans within each one of those verticals. And that's really been, I think, the success of Fox. As you're well aware, on the Fox side, we did divest some of the portfolio about 6 years ago. And now we're really focused again on that news, sports, streaming, and entertainment space.
Yeah. And I assume there's a number of models and use cases where the advertising and the messaging can follow people as they go into those different verticals between news and sports and other kinds of entertainment. You might find someone who's a fan of all of these and kind of be able to pinpoint them pretty accurately.
Well, the audiences are tremendously complementary, right? I think the news viewer that's watching, say, in the middle of the country might be very different than the families that are watching a Gordon Ramsay show, which might be different than the sports fans that are watching, which might be very different than the cord cutters that are actually tuning into Tubi. So what we see is the audiences are very complementary of one another.
How do you see the streaming landscape overall evolving here in 2025? Are there certain milestones or things on the horizon that you're looking at or thinking will happen?
Yeah, listen, I think one thing that we've seen this last year, and I think will continue into next year, is this notion for consumers choosing either free or very, very low subscription tiers, right? Tubi's obviously been a huge beneficiary of what we would call sort of subscription fatigue that's been happening out there. Tubi has the largest content library out there, so a tremendous amount of choice and opportunity for folks to be able to come on in and view what they want. But that also helps to feed the algorithm and make the algorithm smarter. Because you have the largest data set, because you have the most content overall. So I would say that's certainly a big part of it.
Yeah. When you think about accessibility, or I'm not sure what the terminology would be, but when you think about reaching all of these different audiences, do you think about reaching them in ways that make sense for the screens that they have, for the technology and the devices that they have? How do you think about accessibility in that phrase?
Yeah, sure. I think, listen, accessibility is important. Not everybody we know subscribes to cable, and that's why Tubi was developed, right? Tubi was created for the cord cutter and cord never in mind. It was not meant to be sort of an addition on to what you're getting from your cable subscription. That's why Tubi very early on invested in this largest content library out there, so that it would be a suitable replacement for what folks are getting through their linear buy. So we're trying to, not only from a content and technology, from a technology standpoint, be accessible to everybody, but then also from a content and a diversity standpoint, be able to put on and be able to house enough diverse types of content so that we're accessible and desirable to audiences across the spectrum.
Yeah. So we're here at CES. Famously, if CES is anything, it's a place that showcases a lot of cool screens, a lot of cool technologies that will eventually showcase the content that you're talking about creating. When you look at that, do you look 2, 3, 5 years out at like, oh, there's going to be a different kind of screen, or screens will be able to do new and different kinds of things? How much of that goes into your planning and you're thinking about the future?
Yeah, listen, I think for us it all starts with the IP. And then once you start with that IP and that fan base, how do you engage those folks in new and different ways? And whether that's a new screen, or whether that is a new social platform, or whether that's a podcast. All of these add different elements of how you could interact with your fans and interact with your community to engage them further. Some of it exists on our own platform, some of it exists off of our platforms. For us, we're just focused on making sure that the IP is core to everything we do, and then we're able to deliver on that in new and unique ways depending on what new technologies come out.
We've talked a lot about we talked about a lot of your IP. Is there one specific show or something that is either existing or coming out that you want to recommend, folks, under that umbrella?
The new Tubi original, Quarterback and Me, has been just incredibly hot on the service. It's actually been the #1 show in the service, so I'd certainly recommend people tune into that.
Is that a scripted show or a reality show?
Yeah, no, it's a movie that came on out on Tubi, so and it's doing incredibly well.
People can check that out, and it's free to do
It's free on Tubi, yeah.
Well, Jeff Collins of Fox Corporation, thanks so much for joining us here in the C-Space studio today.
Of course, no, thanks for having me.
And thank you so much for watching. Keep it right here because we are going to keep going here in the C-Space studio. I am James Kotecki. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the C-Space studio. We're still here pumping out the jams at CES 2025. My name is James Kotecki. I'm your host, and joining me is Alex Dow, Global Head of Agency Development and Sales Partnerships at Snap. Alex, welcome to the C-Space studio.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you. I think most people would understand what Snap is if you were to ask them here at a tech-forward conference like CES. But just how do you define the brand generally? Do you ever run into someone who doesn't know what Snap is and kind of need to explain it?
Yeah, we get that question a lot, especially if somebody's not on Snap. But the way I like to explain it is it's a place for people to connect with their closest friends, family, and the community around them. It's where people come to have real conversations with their closest friends.
Yeah.
They're looking at content from our creators, and they're posting a lot of things on the platform as well.
It's an app for connecting with people.
Yeah.
And is it entirely used by people on the phone, or do people ever, does it even make sense to think of it in terms of the desktop, or is it all about the mobile device?
So it's primarily on the phone. However, we did launch a desktop version, so people can see their messages and things on their desktop as well.
Snapping at work.
Yeah.
What are the industry trends that you're looking at here at the beginning of 2025 from your perspective that you think people should be paying more attention to?
A few things. So a few things that have been top of mind and that have kind of dominated the conversations this week is really around creators, building trust and authenticity, and then also attention of platforms. And so as brands are thinking about what platforms, what app formats are driving a lot of attention and engagement, how can they start to build around that? How can they start to adapt their strategy to focus on the most engaging platforms? And so that's been a big topic for us.
When brands think about how to get the attention from the folks that are using Snap, do they need a certain mentality to approach that, in the sense of Snap, as you're saying, it can feel like maybe more of an intimate thing. Do you need to approach it as a brand in a way that is careful, or at least thoughtful and deliberate?
Yeah, we always like to say brands should be building for Snap, right? Like, make snaps, not ads. And so, if you think about the way that people are using Snap, they're sending selfies to their best friends. They're just saying, hey, I'm at the hotel, I'm on my way out. It's very unfiltered, it's easy. And so when brands think about creating content for it, it should feel similar. It should feel native to the platform itself. One of the things that we've recently rolled out with is a new ad product called Sponsored Snaps, where brands can actually show up in a user's inbox. And so those messages that people receive, it feels like a snap. Right, and some of the coolest things we've done is actually having creators show up in there with the brand. We did something with Wicked, where they were our launch partner on Sponsored Snaps, and for their premiere, we had Jonathan Bailey send a snap to all of our community. Our community opened it up, they saw him promoted the movie, and it was great.
This is the actor who played Figaro, is that right?
Yeah.
The guy who was dancing around in those wheels, those hamster wheel things in the library in Wicked. Am I right about that?
Yep.
And so, that must be a pretty cool experience then for the user to kind of feel like, oh, this is an authentic kind of reach out by a creator or an actor that I know, as opposed to just some brand spamming me with another ad.
Yeah, exactly. And the way our community engages with creators is different than other platforms too, because with the creators on Snap, they're posting the behind the scenes, right? It's not the end finished product, it's the behind the scenes of the creation of that, right? Like their day to day, and so it feels very engaging. A lot of times creators say that they feel like their community on Snap actually feels like their friends, right? They're interacting with them like their friends. And so if a creator then sends you a snap, it feels very personal. It feels like a gift that people want to open.
So in all of this human-centric back and forth, where is AI coming into play for you right now? What's actually being used in practice, and what's working, not just for users, but for brands?
So we're incorporating AI across a number of different areas on the platform. I'll talk about some of the advancements we've made on the advertising side. So for example, we use AI with our dynamic product ads. And so for a retailer or a brand that has a catalog, we're able to match that product to the users using AI. We also use it with our auto bidding feature to make sure that they're paying the right bids based off of the users that they're looking for, the performance that they're looking for. Some of the most innovative things we've done is actually with our augmented reality. We've always been a leader in the AR space, and some of our most viral lenses have been AI generated. So it's AI generated lenses that brands can now tap into and use.
And in what sense is it AI generated? Is there a human who's giving a recommendation and the AI is creating it? Or is the AI just creating something that a human would have never even thought of?
It's human prompted,
okay.
right? So the human will still go in and kind of tell it what it's looking for, and then it will generate that lens and create a branded experience.
Do we still, are we still using terms like spatial computing to think about the future in this space? And how do we see kind of AR and spatial computing evolving in the next year?
Yeah, so one thing that we've invested in for a while is actually our spectacles. We've recently released our 5th generation of spectacles, and we believe...
And this is its own, for folks who don't know, this is its own unique device. It looks like glasses, right? And you see through the lens.
Exactly. It's glasses. We just also share our Snap operating system for the spectacles. We have a number of companies that are developing for it, and so there's a lot of excitement around that. And one of the biggest things we've seen in AR is that it's moved away from just a novelty and something that's fun to actually a real utility. And so like people are using it to figure out how to play the piano.
Cool.
We did something with Lego where like you can build Lego blocks. And so it's become like very interactive, and people are using it to solve like real everyday problems. And so what we're excited about is AR really kind of overlaying the world and helping us understand different things and needs.
Do you see the spectacles device as continuing to look like glass? In other words, if for folks who don't know, because we are just talking here, we don't have the visual, how much do they look different from regular glasses? And then are we evolving to the point where you won't be able to tell if someone's wearing one of these spectacles or just regular glasses?
I think it's getting there. Like if you take a look at the different instances of our spectacles, processing power has gotten stronger over that period. And so the amount of space that is required has become less and less. And so you're starting to see the physical units become just more and more like everyday glasses. We're not quite there yet, but it's getting there. And so I think it's, in the next 5 or 10 years, it's definitely moving towards that.
What has Snap learned about, what has Snap learned about Gen Z and younger consumers that you can share with us here for the audience at CES?
Yeah, so I think with Gen Z, there are a couple things we've learned is like, one, they can tell when they're being sold to in an inauthentic way. And so what Gen Z and millennials and people broadly are really looking for is like real, genuine relationships, connections, and building trust. And if you think about that from a brand perspective, how can we continue to help brands build that trust with the consumers? And so that's why, again, we go back to saying build snaps and not ads, is like how can you actually provide value back to the consumers? Linking it back to creators, we've also run a number of studies that show Gen Z and millennials, they trust creators, right? They are willing to purchase more from brands and products that are creator recommended. And so that has actually captured a lot of attention from Gen Z millennials.
Is there something about the future, say the next 5 years, that you think will happen that maybe others in your industry don't, that others might find implausible, but that you think is actually going to happen?
Yeah, I think, like going back to AR, I think that the way that AR is then kind of stitched back into how a brand thinks about driving outcomes and performance, it is going to be really the center of a lot of what folks are doing. Even thinking about, what people can do on our platform, like a brand, if they wanted to connect with our consumers, what they could do is go in and, let's just say you're a shoe brand. You're a shoe brand that wants to connect with consumers, you want to build some trust, you have something that you want to promote, well, that shoe brand can then work with an athlete that is then promoting that shoe. Then, building an augmented reality experience so that consumers can try on that shoe. And then send one of those ads to our entire community of 850 million people that's then creator promoted, they could try it on, and then they can purchase. And so I think AR really has an ability to drive a more frictionless kind of experience for brands if they use it in the right capacity.
I'm so glad you brought that up because it seems like I've had conversations here in the C-Space studio for 8 years, and certainly the metaverse and kind of VR, AR was hotter in previous years, but now what I really like about this conversation is talking about the practical ways that this is actually being, as you say, kind of woven back into the reality of people, and that it hasn't gone away, but maybe people have wrestled with it, tried to figure it out, and now they actually are figuring out how to make it work for folks.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually don't think it's as far away as we think. Like a lot of the features and the technologies there today, it's a matter of bringing it all together, right? And so that's what I'm excited about is, working with brands, figuring out like, how do we actually get there? Like what are you trying to solve for, and how do we use these different aspects that we have to get there for you?
Well, thanks for bringing it all together for us, Alex Dow of Snap. We really appreciate your time here.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for watching us. This has been day one of our Thought Leadership interview series here in the C-Space studio, talking to marketing, media, advertising, and brand leaders about the future of human connection and how new technology makes that all possible. We will be back tomorrow for day two. Wherever you're watching us live right now, just come on back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Vegas time, and we'll see you there. I'm James Kotecki from CES 2025.